Terbosic.
You got it. Yeah.
Welcome
Thank you.
to Dr. Gold. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate your time. You are the very pinnacle of the game here in Pittsburgh and beyond.
Well, I got lucky, Fell in love with what I did early and got to do it every day since. It's really like a TED Talk in a weird way. But I talk about how where inspiration really comes from. And when in May of 2010, I was helping Paul Gertner, my mentor, I was helping him produce his magic show in New York City. So he had taken me to Manhattan with him. And I'm with him. I'm producing his magic show. I'm running all the cues and setting up all the tricks. But we're in Manhattan. We're at Assembly 1, SAM1, which stands for Society of American Magicians.
Okay.
And that was the first assembly. And it was actually the president of that assembly was Harry Houdini. So it was the 100th year anniversary for the assembly, and they wanted to have a killer show for all the magicians, and and they even kind of opened it up to the public. So they brought in the best. They brought in Paul Gertner.
Wow.
That's how much they think of this. That's how big he is.
Right.
He's such a big deal. And so Paul took me along on the road because he had already taken me on a couple trips with him. And so I was in New York, and we're helping him with the show. And when the show was over on Sunday, we were packing up all the gear, and he said to me as we were about to ship off and come back to Pittsburgh, he said, "Lee, we have a little bit of time left." He goes, "Do you want to see if we can go find Harry Houdini?" Now, at that moment, I cared about
The
Harry.
grave.
Yeah, at the grave. Yeah.
There's some amazing graves in New York. It's a big part of it is the Titanic story.
The Titanic story.
Titanic was going to New York City.
That's right.
People don't know that. And so a lot of the graves are in New York. And there's you can do a whole Titanic tour in Manhattan.
Oh, yeah, right. I've seen that advertised, actually. Yeah. Some of the bigger names that had died on the ship.
Totally.
Right? Yeah, man.
So Houdini is buried in Manhattan?
He's buried in Queens. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In a little Jewish cemetery. And I didn't know that at the time. But, and at the time when Paul mentioned this to me, I was a fan of Harry and but I wasn't super into Harry how I am now. And that day, and even before we would go to see him, visit the cemetery to find him, I was under the impression that Harry had been buried in Appleton, Wisconsin. So let me explain. So when Harry came over from Budapest, Hungary in 1878 with his mom and his dad and his brother and his sister, they immigrated from Budapest through Ellis Island, and they ended up settling in Appleton, Wisconsin. So in my mind, when Harry died in October 31st, 1926, Halloween, I just assumed that Harry had been buried in Appleton because that was where he claimed to be his American hometown. Now, that wasn't the truth. Paul knew that he was actually buried in that little Jewish cemetery in Queens. So that afternoon, we went and tried to find Harry's gravesite, which was, it's just a cool thing to do. And we did, and we hung out there for a little bit, and we talked about history of magic, like the magicians had come before us, magic of now, and where we thought it was going to go into the future. And then we came home, and that was like our day, Yeah. But when we got back to Pittsburgh, he gave me a book. Now, this all comes back to getting books, like these magic books. I was stealing them from the Carnegie Library when I was, a 10-year-old kid, and now here I am, this was in 2010, so many, many years later, and Paul's handing me something known as the Taschen Magic Book, which is a very large coffee table book. It's very big. Now, that evening in 2010, when I opened that new book that Paul gave me as a thank you, I literally opened it to the page of that photograph of Harry Houdini doing the upside-down straitjacket escape in downtown Pittsburgh. So there I am. That day, I'm at his grave, and now I'm staring at a photo of him on my dining room table in Pittsburgh of him hanging in downtown Pittsburgh. And I'm going, this is a sign. I have to follow this. I have to do more research on it. So I called Rick Seebeck, who I was friends with, and I said, "Rick, do you know about this black and white photo of Harry Houdini in downtown Pittsburgh, November 6, 1916. And he said, "Yeah, Lee, I know all about it." He goes, "I would love to talk to you about it." And so then I linked up with Rick Seebeck. We met downtown, and then we went and we literally took the photo and the book, and we looked around downtown, and we found the exact location. So Rick Seebeck was a big part of that in the very beginning. And then once I was 100% and I had it all, documented, like this is where it happened.
Yeah.
It happened at noon that day. It was on the 6th. once I had all this information, I did the math. I was like, well, 100 years from that day would be November 6, 2016. Well, at the moment, it was 2010. So I was like, wow, I have like 5 years to kind of figure this out. So that's what I did. For the next 5 years, I kept it in complete secrecy of what I was truly trying to do. I would tell people occasionally. I would tell a friend, like, hey, I would take people's phones, actually. And I would go to November 6th
Make an
to
event. Oh, that's brilliant.
2016, and I
love
would
that.
put it in their phone, like,
So
reminder.
smart. Yeah.
And it was like kind of my way of holding it to me.
Yeah.
You
Keeping
know,
yourself responsible.
Keeping myself, because
Yeah.
I knew I couldn't
telling somebody that
I
you're
couldn't,
sober or something.
Well, here's the thing: I couldn't push it. There was no pushing of the date.
You couldn't. Well, yeah.
I
There's
couldn't
no way to
delay.
move it forward, but you hadn't gotten permits yet. You
No.
hadn't gotten the
This was
city's
still
approval.
This was still very early.
Rick Seaback is a news guy.
So Rick
Or-
Seaback works for WQED.
Okay.
He's known as like the Pittsburgh historian.
Oh wow.
So he is like the guy in Pittsburgh for.
Were you able to find news articles and clippings about the event?
As I was doing all my research on it, I started to figure out all the information that I could on it.
Yeah.
And then as I got closer to the date of November 6th, I started to feel, I started to almost feel like the anxiety of it, of not the anxiety of like being upside down and doing it, but the anxiety of like wanting to try to pull it off.
Yeah.
Because that's also kind of difficult.
You mean the first year that it was coming, or the actual final year it was coming?
The final year it was coming.
But you'd practiced it.
So
obviously.
I had been doing the straitjacket in my escape since I was 15. Yeah. So when I was 15, on my birthday, I told my parents, I said, I want a straitjacket. And they were like, you're out of your mind, kid. Like, could you pick something normal? But they were great. They figured out that there was a company in California that made and still sold straitjackets to this very day.
Yeah.
So they bought one for me, and I got one. And so once I got it, like, I had to like learn it out of a book, like how I had, diagrams of like Harry Houdini, how he would perform the escape.
Sure.
And so then I had mom put me in the straitjacket, and I would roll around my living room and until I could get out of it, and then I'd have her put me in it again, and I would do it again, and then over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And then eventually I took it and I put it in my act. So it became part of my act. But it was always done in a way where it wasn't done serious. It's not like I didn't take it too serious. I made it more of a comedy bit of a straitjacket escape, like a Harry Anderson. I grew up loving Harry Anderson and Penn and Teller and those guys. And so, but when I was going to do it for Houdini 100 for the to replicate Harry's stunt, I was going to do it legit. Like, I was going to do a real version of it, not a comedy version of it. So I wanted to scare the shit out of the city. That was my goal. And that's what happened. I scared the hell out of everybody that day.
Is there a net underneath you?
No net. No, I did it without a net.
100 feet in the air.
100 feet upside
down.
I'm being held by, I had a hook going around my ankles that was attached to a crane hook. Yeah. I know. When you tell mom and dad that's what you want to do, they're like, they think you're nuts.
How does the money side work? Like, you have to front the money for a crane?
So
and who pays you to do this crazy stuff?
Well, it was free. It was a free stunt. I did it the same reason why Harry Houdini did them. I did it. And I'll explain. So when Harry Houdini did that in 1916, that image that was taken, he was doing it off of, it says the Pittsburgh Post on the building. And the reason why he was doing it off that building is because when he would come into cities, he would use the upside down straitjacket escape as a marketing tool, as a performance tool to sell tickets to his shows.
Yeah.
So the way he did that is he would go to the newspaper and he'd say, hey, listen, I'll do this the next day off the top of your roof, and all you got to do is take the photo, put me on the front page.
That's so wild.
And that's how he sold tickets to his shows.
He was marketing. He was a marketing genius.
The
1910s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was absolutely brilliant when he came to that. That's honestly, that's why I discovered marketing and business as my career choice. It was really about Harry Houdini. I didn't know it 100% at the time when I picked marketing and business, but looking back on it, it all made sense to me because that's how Harry Houdini did it. He in a way created social media. He created social buzz. That's what he invented. There's nobody else that can go back in time that was doing the outside performances like he was doing, the spectacles that he was creating at such a high level.
What made you want to do this?
I've analyzed that quite a few times over my life, and I can pinpoint the moments where I knew magic and being a magician and, doing this for the living would be the full scale for my life. And that was around, in the early days. That was like when I was a 12-year-old kid. So just a quick little backstory on it. I discovered magic, or the art of magic, when I was like 9. Went to a birthday party, saw a magician type thing, came home, begged mom and dad to teach me magic tricks. They had nothing. So they ended up taking me to the Carnegie Library in Homestead. That's where I checked out some of my very first books on magic.
Wow.
They got me going.
Wow. And it's gone now, right? That's actually one of the buildings that CMJ explored, I think.
Well, the one I did was the one over in Homestead. That one's still there.
Okay, this library still exists.
Yeah, the library's still there, but the books are gone because I kept
You
those
took
books.
them.
I
You kept them and
those books, yeah.
Dog-eared them. And
Yeah, well, I remember as a kid, I didn't want to give them back because I really was the kid that was like underneath the sheet with the light, reading magic books from a library, trying to like learn as fast as I could.
But then you had to keep them so that nobody else could follow your footsteps.
Exactly. I didn't want to give back the secrets, so I stole the secrets. That was my first crime. Stole those books.
And this was card magic, like sleight of hand.
Yeah, card magic, sleight of hand, general magic, stuff like that. And then that morphed into my parents seeing that like I was kind of obsessed with this magic thing. And then they did their due diligence and they figured out there was this magic shop on the south side called the Cuckoo's Nest. And so I don't know if do you remember the Cuckoo's Nest on the south side? No, you ever didn't drive by it?
Never.
It was.
I don't remember.
I can tell you where it is because you've been in this location many, many times. It is where now Local is.
Okay.
Local. That used to be
LOKAL or whatever.
Yeah, Local. Yeah, right on East Carson Street.
Yeah.
Across from Mario's. But
that's the same building?
Same
it was
building.
the Cuckoo's Nest,
it was the
which was a magic shop.
It was a magic shop, right.
And who was, like, do you know who was running it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Linda and Tom Petrish. They were the owners. Tom was a magician. Linda kind of like ran it. And then she kind of employed all the cast of characters, all the magicians from Pittsburgh.
Wow.
That's how kind of that's where we all hung out. Was
you ended up working there too?
I did as a 16-year-old kid. That was when I first got my license. That I could drive,
driver's license. I thought you got a magician's license.
No. Like I meant, like I had that mobility now that like I didn't have to like I didn't have to get driven around. So I was able to go and have a real job in a weird way, but it was in a magic shop. So it was not your typical real job. I was doing magic tricks for the public, essentially trying to sell them.
In Cuckoo's Lounge.
In the Cuckoo's Nest, in there. So what would happen is like people would come off Carson Street or out of Mario's, and so I was always dealing with drunk audiences, of course.
Sure.
But that was I started performing, doing magic in there, and then at that time I'd already been doing it quite extensively. And before I knew it, man, I was doing restaurants. I had 6 restaurants a week at one point that I was performing at around Pittsburgh.
These are stage shows.
Well, restaurants back then were not so much stage shows. I would go to your table. I was like the magician that would like walk around a restaurant and would like go up to like big groups and like, would essentially like entertain the clientele until the food came out.
That's cool.
And I built like a little monopoly out of it. I was at like I didn't, I don't know if people remember the Nakama,
of course,
and all the cards on the ceiling.
Whoa!
Yeah.
I just took my wife there for our 5th anniversary. I mentioned that to a couple of people. They go, "What?" I was like, "Well, it doesn't look now like what it looked like back then."
It's changed quite a bit. But in the cards that were all over that ceiling, I put them all there.
Whoa!
And it's so funny. It's funny that you said that you were just there because so was I. Recently, I was just driving through Southside, and I had some time to kill before a meeting, and I just happened to be right next to the Nakama, so I just pulled in, and I was like, "Oh,
wonder if they're still up there, right?"
Well, I was craving some sushi, so I went in and I looked up, and I realized they took them all down.
Oh wow!
And they took them all down, and I ended up talking to one of the bartenders, and I asked, I explained who I was. And they had told me the reason why they took them all down was because they had been up there for so long. Like, I had cards up there for over, 20 years.
What were they doing up there?
Well, it was a magic trick that I would do where you would sign your name on a playing card. I would put it back in the deck.
Yeah.
I would take the pack of cards. I would wrap them in a rubber band. And then I would throw the entire pack of cards to the ceiling. And your signed card would essentially stick to the ceiling.
Yeah.
And all the rest of the cards would come falling down, still wrapped in a rubber band. And it was like a little it's a really amazing trick. And it was like a little hustle for me because when I was at Nakama, people would literally pay me to put their card on the ceiling.
Yeah.
And I had hundreds, if not maybe 1,000 up there at one point. But the problem is when I was just in there recently and I saw that they were all, they had vanished. they had told me, they said, well, the reason why we took him down was because, over by the fryers, that creates a lot of heat and steam.
Right.
And that steam would
Right.
go up to the ceiling where those cards were. Because, I haven't been performing it in the comma in like a long time. But they kept them up there for a long time. But what's happening is they were warping the card, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
There's
then,
a lot of smoke in that place. If you see what they do in those hibachi grills,
oh,
like
yeah,
it gets,
right. So that hibachi smoke would rise up, and it would warp the cards that had been sticking to the ceiling for years. And essentially, every once in a while, one would
they'd
crack
come back
loose,
down,
right? And it would
yeah,
land in someone's
land in their
meal.
sushi,
and it would be like,
that's
what the hell?
no
So
bueno. It's like, fuck you, Susie.
yeah, so therefore they had to like make a call. They were like, well, we're giving away meals, and we don't even have a magician anymore. So.
Right.
So that's what happened. But yeah, that's kind of like, those early days, those grinding years of me doing magic in restaurants and then using magic. Like I went to Robert Morris University, so I used those restaurant shows to get bigger shows.
Yeah.
And essentially that's how it turned into me paying my way through college with, performing at restaurants and doing private parties and the corporate events. And then I got into the college market. And then I got into the TV, and it was just snowballed after that. So
Yeah. Why did you want to go to college?
So I really didn't at first. Once I graduated high school, I really wanted to just go be a magician and and just follow my dream. But mom and dad were very much like, that's hard to do as a magician. They kind of saw it, even though I had big eyes for the world. And at the same time, I graduated in 2001. And obviously, I graduate, and then what happens next? 9/11. So I grew up at a time where my grandfather, who I was close to when I was young, before he passed away, he was a Marine. And I had always heard all the war stories, and he was on Iwo Jima and the Battle of Iwo Jima. And so I then wanted to be a Marine.
No way.
Yeah, and I enlisted in the military, and I was all ready to ship. And that was when my mentor, his name is Paul Gertner, he's a magician from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I happened to be really lucky as like a 15, 16-year-old magician to get to know this other magician named Paul Gertner. And he gave me, he was giving me kind of advice, as much on the magic element of like the sleight of hand, and we would talk about the craft, but it was also about the business of magic. And he said to me, he said, Lee, I've seen a lot of young magicians in my time. He goes, I've never seen someone at your age, at your skill set. He goes, you really should think about following magic.
Wow.
And so that was when I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't join the military. Maybe I shouldn't go be a Marine. Maybe I, because I had aspirations of going off to Afghanistan and being in part of that war. But he then really broke down what it was to be in show business. And he explained to me, in show business, he explained to me, he does very well doing card tricks and performing at corporate events for a living. So once he explained to me really what show business was, he goes, Lee, you'll always be a showman. He goes, the business element, if you can tackle that and master that, he goes, you'll never go hungry again. He goes, you'll be so successful. So that's what I then concentrated on. I then, got out of the Marine idea and then decided to sign up for Robert Morris to go get a degree in marketing and business.
Interesting. Learn how to sell yourself, basically.
Learn how to
that
sell
was
myself.
the idea.
Yeah.
The Marine part is interesting, though, just to kind of tie that in a bow. It's like you really felt that patriotic beauty after 9/11.
Yeah,
like you had people that were affected by
right.
9/11 and people in New York and stuff.
And they were buddies with, not personally, like I didn't know anybody that died in 9/11, but I had friends that were essentially signing up for the military, like good buddies that they were doing it. And it was like, well, my grandfather was a Marine.
Yeah.
I was like, I almost felt like the call, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it was really, with my mentor and my parents really honing down on me like, hey, you really got this unique gift with magic and sleight of hand and it being an entertainer.
Yeah.
That we think you should explore that.
Was it anything, do you remember anything in particular that impressed him? Like, did you invent a trick or show him something at a show or something?
Absolutely. So when I was a young kid, my story of how I got to meet him, Paul Gertner. Now, Paul is, I talk about him often because he's such a legend. He's so talented, and he's so good with other magicians.
Is he still alive?
Yeah, yeah. I still talk to him very
Still
regularly.
performing?
Yep. He now lives in Boston, has his own show in Boston.
Cool.
And we talk about, magic and theater and, and the arts and the business and all the time, constantly. And he, early on, how I got to know him was that when I was coming up as a young magician at like 13 years old, my godmother, of all people, my mom's best friend, who happens to be my godmother, she had said to me, she goes, Lee, I know a magician that I dated in high school.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, what do you want me to do with that information? But at the same time, I think about a year and a half later, Paul was then doing a show on the South Side. And she goes, I want to take you to see it so you can see how good he is.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize the levels to what I like the magic world that there really were until I got to see Paul live. And that's when I realized I knew nothing. I knew jack shit compared to how good he was. And so
what specifically did you see that like blew you away? I mean,
other than, obviously he's a master magician. He's won something called FISM. So FISM stands for Federation International Society of Magic, making him literally one of the greatest magicians in the world. He's the personal magic teacher to Johnny Carson. Like, he's been on the Tonight Show 3 times. Like, I mean, I know so much about his career because I have so much admiration for what he did, and learning from what he did so that I could apply it to myself. And him being from Pittsburgh, I mean, it just made for me, like, it gave me so many advantages.
Sure.
And so I wanted to take advantage of those incredible advantages I had. And the fact that, like, my godmother took me to see his magic show, and then after the show, she introduced me to him.
Yeah.
And, of course, he's now thinking, like, why the hell is my ex-girlfriend from high school here? But at the same time, he's meeting this young magician that he had never met before. Well, when I met him, he said, Lee, come to my office. He goes, I'd like to, show you a few things. So his office was in Etna. And so that was where my dad was from, and that was where my grandfather lived.
Right.
And so I would then go over to Etna, and I visited him in his office, and he said, hey, show me a few things. I showed him what I could do, and he loved it. And he said he gave me one of his magic books. So he had written a magic book on on theory and sleight of hand and stuff. And he gave it to me. He said, Lee, he goes, come back to me when you can do a few of these tricks out of this book. Well, that whole summer, all I did was just try to master as many of those things I could. I then came back at a later date and blew his mind with, his material essentially, and from that day forward, we've been best buddies.
That's so cool.
So it
really is such a great mentorship story. Like, when you have something like that, what better way to use it than to bring in the next generation of talent?
Exactly, and I think that's and I've done the same. Over my years of success, I have definitely looked out for the other upcomers or the people that are trying to break in. I've worked with young magicians even throughout the pandemic. When we were all isolated, I knew a couple of young magicians that had reached out and wanted information about the same way I wanted information when I was like hitting up Paul. And I was doing the same thing. I was like saying, hey, here, go read and learn these things, and then when you can come back and do those for me, I'll give you the next step.
I think it's so important, and it's definitely something that I've picked up as well when I'm trying to be a mentor to kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some of the ZBT guys here will sometimes ask me for help DJing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I won't give them the keys to the car right away. I want to know that they're committed.
Yeah, exactly.
And so for me, it's like, if you really want to know, I can tell you a lot, but you have to have the thick skin.
Yeah,
First of all,
right.
you have to be able to take criticism.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to take feedback, and if you're not, there's no point.
Right? Yeah, you're gonna be a pain in the ass. So
not gonna
you're
be
gonna
worth
get in
it.
your own way, essentially.
That wasn't the only thing that you did during the pandemic, though. I saw that you were also like performing magic for kids in the hospital over.
I did do that
over video and stuff.
Yeah, quite a few times.
Dude, that's so cool. Was that UPMC?
I did that for Children's Hospital. I've done many things for those guys over the years. And yeah, it's just, I'm always looking for unique opportunities to share the talent, to share the art. And what better than, for kids occasionally when I can. I'm not really, and it's funny, I'm not a kids performer. I don't market to kids. I don't do shows for kids. But when there are kids there, I always have something. I have a few really amazing things I can do for kids. But I do stay in the the nightclub world, the theater shows type space. So I'm not doing the and I give those magicians, like there are just definitely magicians for each kind of market, and there's really great. Like I said, when I was coming up, I did those restaurant markets. Well, now there are just magicians that just focus on doing kid shows that are just kid show magicians, and that's all they focus on, because it does take a very specific skill set for kids to perform for kids. So when I do it, it's just randomly, when they pop up.
So, is magic expanding? I mean, I don't even know how to describe it, but
Magic's
business
big, man.
business booming?
It's
Is
very
it
big right now. Yeah, it's
is it
crazy.
stable? Is it contracting? Because
no, it's
I would
definitely an art that has definitely grown a lot. Since like what I have witnessed, over the last 20 years of coming. I mean, I've been doing magic professionally for over 25 years, and I've been doing it since I've been doing it. My career has now been 30 years. So I'm 30 years deep. And the crazy thing about that is, in that 30 years, I've only been a magician, actor, entertainer. I've never had another job. I got my degree in marketing and business. I got that diploma. It just sits on my wall. I've never had to use it for anything. I don't even have a resume. Like, I've never even made a resume in my life. I've literally just been an entertainer, magician my entire career. And that's exactly what I've loved. That's what I've loved about diving into this world and figuring it out, is that it's so rewarding to wake up every day and to just have creativity beyond your job agenda.
Is it the stage shows that really do it for you, or is it the performances, the feats, like the Houdini 100 thing, or what is it?
Everything, man. It's so much of everything. I look forward to so many different things. I love the history of magic. I love talking about Harry Houdini because I was such a fangirl of him as a kid, and it has carried over into my career now because of my just like understanding it all, how he did it now, and realizing like what he was doing then was so freaking impressive, and so I think it's so cool that like all the knowledge I have on him, it's so fun to share it with people. So I love the history of magic, but I love the stage performances. I do stand-up shows. Close-up is my bread and butter, like with a pack of cards. I have my own theater show in downtown Pittsburgh at Hotel Monaco with 52 Up Close.
Yeah,
and that is
we're looking forward to checking that one out.
That's a sleight of hand only show. I've been doing that show in Pittsburgh since 2016.
So cool.
And but the big stunts as well. I love doing the crazier shit. Like Houdini 100. That was a crazy ride.
He really did that performance in Pittsburgh 100 years ago.
Yeah, that was that, and I discovered
1916.
1916. Yeah, it was November 6, 1916, when he performed the upside down straitjacket escape at the corner of Wood Street and Liberty Avenue. Now, the photograph that I was inspired by it, and where I actually figured it all out. The story behind that photograph is part of my show. I talk about Houdini 100 in my act now. So if you want to get into the talk about his death wasn't a stunt. He didn't die by a stunt. He actually died from appendicitis.
Okay.
So he would occasionally he would let strong men, like back then, like world champions. He would do it for photo ops. But in 1926, he happened to be backstage. He was in Toronto, and he was doing something called a debunking, where he was literally telling the audiences how spiritualism works. So he was telling you how
he got really into this at one point in his career, where there were these people that thought they could take pictures of fairies, and there was like a very prominent one where he was trying to disprove these kind of
he would disprove,
psychics and mystics.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he would disprove. So he was against all of that because, and you would say like, oh, why would he be against that? Isn't it considered like a form of entertainment or magic? It isn't, because back then it was a hustle. It's the same reason why we kind of like shun like the three shell game, or like the 3-card Monty hustles. It's because like it's not like back then he was preying on people's like emotions, or the spiritualism was. They were saying like, oh, we can talk to your dead relative, give us your money. When of course Harry Houdini knew that was all bullshit.
Right.
He knew it was just magic tricks that were being performed on people, and they were being conned. So he hated that because he got let down because he was so obsessed with the afterlife. And that was a direct result of the death of his mom. When his mom died, he wanted to make contact with her. And then when he tried all those times with the spiritualism, he was seeing through it all and seeing that it was nothing but gimmicks. That's what made him angry. And so then he wanted to shine a light on it. And that, obviously turned into many things. But at that time in 1926, when he was teaching people about spiritualism and the tricks that they were pulling, he obviously, had a lot of haters. One of those haters is James Gordon Whitehead, and that was the guy who came backstage and punched Houdini in the stomach. So, like I said, he would let people punch him in the stomach because Harry was really well put together. He worked out, and that was kind of rare for somebody back in the early 1900s to be working out. But in 1926, Harry was 52 years old. So he was a magician that had been doing magic since he was like 8 years old, who had gone through an incredible run of physical stunts and things where he's been beaten up. And so now he's 52. He's been through a crazy run of life. And now he's got a guy in Toronto punching him in the stomach. Well, what did that do? That punch, we believed that he had already been experiencing the signs of appendicitis, but being that he's Harry Houdini and he doesn't want to miss his audience or his show, the show always must go on.
Right.
No entertainer forcibly takes themselves off stage. There's always someone forcing us off stage.
For sure.
And that's what should have been done to him, but unfortunately he wasn't. So he's having appendicitis. He doesn't know that. He then meets this James Gordon Whitehead backstage. Whitehead says to him, "Hey, is it true that you can take punches to the stomach?" Harry says yes. Before Harry can brace, he hits him in the stomach. That then causes the appendicitis to then probably
ruptured
or made it worse.
Yeah.
Well, what did Harry do that night? He went on stage and did a show.
Oof.
Yeah. And so the next night, when he was in Detroit, so now his show went to Detroit a day later. That was when he started to feel the symptoms of what he was experiencing.
Sepsis.
And so he then collapses on stage, gets rushed to the hospital in Detroit, and 7 days later he passes away at 1:03 p.m. of complications.
Ruptured appendicitis.
Complications from appendicitis.
Septicemia. Yeah, they probably, if they had better IV resuscitation and prompt IV antibiotics, you probably could have saved him.
He could have saved it, yeah.
At this point. But also he should have attended to his symptoms. You know who it reminds me of course, is Bonix.
Yes,
right?
that's
Remember
right.
with the heart attack.
And
a couple days of symptoms, but he didn't want to listen, and he wanted to keep performing, of course. I think we're all like that, right? As artists, we tend to put the clientele ahead of us.
We do, yeah. We don't listen to our bodies sometimes as entertainers, and though we should. And Harry was the big he was a big culprit of that. So he didn't listen, and ultimately it ends up costing him dearly.
So he dies in
Detroit,
and then body is shipped to New York, and he's buried in Queens.
He's buried in Queens. Now the crazy thing about this is that in 1926, he was creating a new final illusion, a final escape in his act that he was going to debut in his 1927 world tour. Obviously, he never got to that. But he had been working on it, and that idea of the trick that he was going to start closing his show with, it was called Buried Alive. You're thinking of David Blaine, I think.
David Blaine, yeah.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. He did one, but his was very different. He did a thing where he stayed underground for like 7 days.
Yeah, no food.
But so his was more of an endurance test rather than a test of like being actually buried. He was under glass where you could see him.
Yeah, so his lungs weren't being compressed by the dirt or something like that.
Like when you're doing a Buried Alive, you have only so much time. Like when he was doing it, he was being pumped, oxygen, and even he even had water and food. And
so it's more about the claustrophobia, and the lack of food.
It depends on what version you're doing. Like in a way, Blaine created his own version by doing it that way. When Harry Houdini was doing it, he did it one time in California where it went bad and he almost died, and so he didn't want to do it again. But then he started thinking about a way of doing it on stage where he would have the coffin lowered into a big glass box, and then the big glass box would then be filled with dirt, and then he would then escape the coffin, climb to the dirt, and appear on top of the dirt. And so that idea, he had it mocked up, he had it created, he had the actual coffins made. And he had it in part of all of his like touring show. So he was like, it's almost like when you're working on a bit, but you're not ready to commit it to the show yet, but yet you still have it. So he had that with him in 1926 when he died in Detroit. Yeah. And so the one of the coffins for that piece, they used him. That's what they used.
They buried him in one of the actual coffins from the bit.
They shipped his body back in it, and then they used it to bury him in. Yeah. I know.
Buried dead.
He's buried dead, yeah, in Queens. So, but there was all this, like, learning about Harry and learning these stories about his antics and and some of the cool stuff he did in his career that I became very much drawn to. I be very much drawn to that history element of it. And then when you throw in Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
I know everything about Harry in Pittsburgh. So he lost his dog here once. Yeah, he had a little dog named Charlie that he lost in Pittsburgh. It's like a whole other story. But so when I'm piecing all these ideas together for like Houdini 100, I wanted to touch history. That's essentially what I wanted to try to do. I wanted to replicate a moment in time. I wanted to make Pittsburghers of today feel the same way that the Pittsburghers in the photograph that I found Harry Houdini hanging upside down in. They had a really amazing thrill that afternoon that they talked about for the rest of their life. So that was what I wanted to try to do. I wanted to try to give Pittsburgh that way. And I know you talked about how like the financial things worked out. I paid for it all myself. I financed it, everything. I did it all my own. And the reason why was because like everybody I would ever go to that was like, I'd be like, this is what I want to do. They think I was insane. So I just didn't feel like having to like explain myself, But eventually in 2015, I talked to, Mr. Mayor Peduto, from Pittsburgh.
Bill Peduto.
Yeah, when he was the mayor. And I showed him the photograph, and I told him I wanted to replicate the photograph and all that stuff. And so he was very much like, he thought I was nuts, but at the same time, he was about, he was all about it. He thought it would be super cool for Pittsburgh. And, away I went. He helped me cut through kind of a lot of the red tape because I had to get a giant crane downtown.
Right. You had to close the streets. You had to get police, security, barricades.
Right. And then we had all the celebrities that came out for it. There were so many there.
Wow.
When I was on stage that day, before I did it, I had Franco Harris, and Rocky Blyer and Tom Savini all put me in the straitjacket that day.
Wow.
Wow.
It was a real spectacle.
I know, it really was. And the reason why I invited, Tom Savini, one of the reasons why is because he's huge into magic, and he's been a buddy of mine, and he's super knowledgeable. So I had to have him there. Two, Rocky Blyer, I'm a buddy. I've been buddies with him for a while, and I invited Rocky because he was actually born and raised in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Oh, wow.
So I had that little really cool Houdini link of him being there. And then I invited Franco because I was friends with Franco, and I just thought, having Franco there would be such a cool moment. And, of course, we all joke about the immaculate reception, him catching that ball out of midair. Yep. So I always joke in my show, I said the reason why I brought him there is in case I would have fell because he would have, plucked my head off right before it would have hit Liberty Avenue,
That's awesome.
So that's why I brought Franco.
Although nobody really knows if he actually caught it, right? If he caught it cleanly, there's no photograph. There's the video doesn't show.
The video, I think the video is pretty clear that he. I've talked to Franco.
The bottom of the football is not shown.
Well, they always said it was a clear catch. It was whether or not it hit off the helmet. That was the despair. That was what people argued.
Well, what part of the helmet or the chest? We don't know that.
No. So when the ball came out of Terry Bradshaw's hands, when the two guys, it was Frenchie Fuqua.
Yep.
And the tailback. They collided.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment where if the ball hit off Frenchie, I think it's a down ball.
Yeah. But based on the rules at the time.
Now
it would have been live.
It would have been a live ball.
But at the time, you're
and he still ran it in.
If it hits off of an offensive player
I think
for the Steelers.
I think if it hit off the offensive player, it would be a dead ball.
Then it's dead ball.
So they always wanted to say it hit off Frenchie when it actually
It hit the defender, the linebacker.
It hit the defender, but it was such like one of those timed.
It
was almost like one of those timed collisions where it was too close to tell.
Yep.
But
there's no video there. Just to finish up with Harry, what was his real name?
Eric Weiss.
Wow. So he was like a New York Jew, basically? Or,
no. He was from
Wisconsin Jew?
No, he was Hungarian from Budapest.
Yeah.
So
Eric Weiss.
So when he'd come over, the Weiss family.
Yeah.
And how he created the name Harry Houdini.
It was Houdin, the French, greatest, like the first real illusionist.
Well,
right?
it was Robert Houdin, who was a French magician at the time. And when Harry was a young magician, he had gotten a book of Robert Houdin's secrets, some of his work. So he was reading Robert Houdin. Now, back then, if you added an I to something, it meant to be like something. So he took Houdin and he added the I, and it became Houdini when you Americanized it. Now, the name Harry, his name was Eric Weiss, right? So, but his grandmother and his mom, whenever they would say Eric, it would come out as Airy. and it almost started to sound like Harry.
Yeah.
Now, that's one of the kind of theories on it of
Yeah.
why he picked Harry and went
Yeah.
with Harry Houdini. The other
It also
is,
just sounds incredible.
well, right. It's a good matching name.
But there's assonance.
But one of the other known things was that there was an American magician named Harry Keller. And so it was almost as if he borrowed the first name from Harry Keller and the last name from Robert Houdin and put them together. But at the same time, that Eric thing was still a known thing. So we don't have 100% accuracy on that one, but we do think it's the latter.
Ways of figuring it out. And what about you? Like, did you ever think about changing your name, not just using your government? And the great Lee Terbosic, the wise and whimsical, or
no, nothing. Man, no. I just kept my name, and it's funny. Like, the reason why I even though it's hard to spell and it's hard to say, I never, even the marketing in me, the marketing element of everything I know screams like have a stage name.
Am I pronouncing it correctly?
You are. No, you are. And
it's the second syllable. Terbosic.
Terbosic. Most people don't, by the way. And they say Terbosic. That's the Croatian way to say it. But it is Americanized. It's Terbosic. The hard O, the turbo.
Yeah.
And but I never changed it. Yeah, turbo.
Turbo could get. There's something there.
That was my dad, so I always let him keep the turbo, and I figured I would keep the whole Terbosic. But the reason why I never changed it was because there is no other Terbosic in the world.
Yep.
I'm a one of one. And it was like, I kind of lucked out. You know, I don't have a Smith or,
The SEO is perfect. Yeah. I have the same exact thing with Goldzer. There's really no other Goldzers. If they have that last name, they're my relative.
They're your relatives.
And I know that.
And there are no, other than me and my dad, there are no other male Terbosics in the world. So it's on me to keep the name going if I choose to.
Yeah, man.
Or I can pull a Houdini and not have kids and die at the age of 52. So
there's nothing I've done in my life more meaningful than becoming a father.
Becoming a dad,
without a doubt. I think, going to medical school, becoming a doctor, being a DJ that was successful, having the company and bringing kids in and writers and nothing compares to it.
Yeah, man.
It's so much fun.
My sister has 3 little girls, so I'm the magic uncle. So and it's so much fun, doing magic for these little girls that because they love it, and that's all they want to see. They love seeing magic, but I love watching them grow up, and it is super cool. And I know it's something that moment I'll probably do it at some point.
You're gonna be so good at it.
I think I will be good at it because my dad was great at it, and I think with what I can bring to it with my magic and stuff, I think I'll be a great dad. Yeah. It's just for me, like I've had so many business and things on my checklist to get done before I get to that moment.
I don't want to cheapen what you do at all, but also I would say parenting is kind of like magic. In order to convince a 2-year-old to do anything, you have to direct their attention.
It's true. It's a little
you have to control their mind in a way. And you have to, when I get my kid dressed in the morning, I don't give him 20 options of shirts.
Yeah.
He gets 3 options at most. And there's a reason for that, right? People's minds need to be directed in a way. And 2, 3-year-olds only have a certain amount of attention that they can give you.
Sure.
So you have to work with it. I actually created a magic trick. I thought I would tell you about it.
Oh, cool.
Just totally on the fly. A couple of weeks ago, I was at the park. There were 3 kids kind of sitting around this puddle, which had formed out of the dirt in the park at Dormont Park. So I started a rumor that it was Godzilla's footprint. I kind of told one of the kids, and another kid was like, "Oh, it's Godzilla's footprint." Like they started getting all excited about it. Then one of the girls comes up. She says, "It's not Godzilla's footprint. Godzilla's not real." I said, "Oh yeah? Let me show you something." I take 2 dandelions in my hand, one hidden, concealed completely in my left hand, and the other one visible. One of them, the one concealed, is a puffball, a dandelion with only white.
Okay.
The fresh one with a yellow flower is the visible one. I hold it up into the divot where I told them Godzilla's footprint was, and I show them all the healthy yellow flower. I wave it, and it turns into the puffball.
Nice. Okay.
Yellow disappears. I say, if it's not Godzilla's footprint, then how did the radioactivity transform that dandelion into a puffball?
Oh, okay. Okay. That's cool. And they bought it?
Oh, 100%. I'd never tried anything like that before, but it worked. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and that's super. Yeah, that's so cool that you can like make, and that's how magic works. Like it's just messing with people's perception of what reality is.
In order to be a real magic trick, I would have had to reproduce the original.
The
right?
original, yeah, that would be the conclusion. If a magician
Prestige.
The Prestige, yeah, the turn and the Prestige. You're thinking of the movie, yeah.
Well, isn't that really what it's called, or no?
It not really. They kind of made that up for the movie, but it's cool. It kind of works though. It kind of does.
But that would have been an important piece, right? You do want to reproduce that
if you want to have a conclusion for the trick, or you could keep it how you did it. I think how you did it was pretty good.
So, other than coming to see you at the Monaco, which we're really looking forward to, you said Saturday nights?
Yeah. So right now the show will be returning. I have it on hiatus right now.
Yep.
I just wrapped it up. I just did all spring, a spring run.
Yep.
So it's off for this. I'm not doing it this summer because I have other projects that I'm working on, but it will be back in September. I'm only doing it for 1 month though, so there's only going to be one more chance to catch it this year. And then I'm going to be into another run of shows that I'm doing. It's called The Life and Death of Harry Houdini.
Oh, cool.
So I actually play Harry on stage. And so that'll be returning to Liberty Magic in downtown Pittsburgh for 6 weeks in October. And that's going to run for until December.
That's awesome.
So if you want to see 52, you'll have a chance to see that in September.
Yeah.
And I can get you those dates because they actually just got confirmed yesterday.
Awesome.
And then the other thing I'll be doing is I will be headlining the Oaks Theater in July 22nd.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
So I have that
that's
coming
pretty
up as
soon.
well.
And that's stand-up?
That'll be my stand-up
stage
show. Yeah,
magic,
that's the stand-up show. That show, so when I was creating all these magic shows, I created 52 Up Close as my close-up magic show. I created that in 2009. I did it for the first time in 2011 with Shop 412. That we did that in, I don't know if you were there that night, but we did a collaboration together.
I remember it happening. I was living in Pittsburgh, I think, at the time, but I don't.
So we did a collab, and I premiered it for the first time ever that night. I brought it back 2 years later to a theater in downtown Pittsburgh called the Bricolage Theater. I ran it there, and then I put it back on the shelf for a few years, and then I brought it back in 2016, and then it's been running since. It's the longest running magic show in Pittsburgh history. It's called 52 Up Close at Hotel Monaco.
Yeah.
So there's that magic show, but along the way, I had created a second magic show called In Plain Sight, and that was not close-up magic. That was the stand-up stuff, all the stage stuff I had over the years that needed a place to live. So I created the magic show called In Plain Sight, and I created that magic show when I was doing the deal that I did with the Cultural Trust of Pittsburgh. So the Cultural Trust, who runs and operates all the theaters in downtown Pittsburgh, they had come to me when I was doing 52 Up Close at the hotel, and they essentially were like, hey, we want to talk to you about this whole magic theater stuff like that you're doing. And, what are the odds of you leaving the hotel and coming and joining us? And I, at the time, I'd already was pretty big into that brand, my brand, and, had sunk a lot of money into it. And it was going very well. I was selling out. I was doing hundreds of shows, and they were all sold out. So I wasn't about to give that up for anything. Even as good of a deal and how amazing of an opportunity it was to work with the trust.
They wanted to put you into the Benedum?
So they wanted to essentially have me help them create a magic theater in Pittsburgh. Oof. And what they wanted me to headline it. And at the time, they didn't really know what they were looking to do. I had to really coax them down the lane of, well, I'm doing the show over here. I really can't be in two places at once. I can't give this up.
Really?
Yeah, I know, right. I wish I could. It'd be a lot easier. Would have saved a lot of headaches. But I said, listen, here's what I can do. It's called 52 Up Close. Right now I'm doing the show like 150 times a year. That's too much. I will cut that down to just 52 times of a year because it fits in with my brand.
There you go.
Now, obviously, I lose a lot of money by doing this, by taking this idea. But at the same time, I gain something because then it frees up my time to then work with the trust to then create this magic theater that they wanted to make. So in the initial moments, we then collaborated on the name of it being Liberty Magic. And the location was going to be the old arcade comedy theater. So the Arcade Comedy Theater had already been established in downtown Pittsburgh, and I was I performed at the Arcade Comedy tons of times over the years. And so when they had moved up the street, that theater became available, or that location, that building. Now, that building is owned by the trust. Now, here's what's really strange, is that at the same moment that the arcade moved out of there, that was when I was looking for a home for 52 Up Close. And so I actually looked into buying the building where Liberty Magic is today. And I realized very quickly that buying that building was one. It wasn't in the budget mainly because of the taxes on the buildings alone are insane.
Yeah.
So to create my own show downtown and make it work, it was just too much.
Yeah.
And that was why I was like, well, I'll go with my second option. The second option was because I had always remembered Penn and Teller and being fans of them and thinking about how, while they headline a casino in Las Vegas, but at the end of the day, if you take away the gambling element, it's just a hotel, you know? And I was like, so they're performing in hotels, like it's a hotel show,
right?
But a really big theater. And so I was like, I don't need a really big theater. I just need a small little room because I only want to put 52 people in it. So that was why I went to the Hotel Monaco with the idea instead of buying.
Oh, wow. So not only is it 52 dates, it's 52 seats.
52 seats. And tickets are $52. So
well, no wonder you couldn't. No wonder you took the beating on when you dropped down the number of shows from 100. You could have just increased the prices,
I was doing 100,
but you were committed to 52.
I was doing 150 times a year.
Yeah, you could have been like the Jews and do multiples. You know, when we give money, we give $18, $36, $72. You could have done 104.
I kept it at 52,
yeah.
But that freed me up with some time so that I could create the show in plain sight.
Right. Because there's different types of magic. Can you explain?
Yeah. So there's mentalism, there's illusion, there's comedy magic, there's obviously there's card magic. There's all these different little genres. And I could give you, like, Houdini would be like the king of escape magic. Like, even though he was a good general magic too, he dabbled in kind of everything. David Copperfield would be considered an illusionist. Now, don't get me wrong, David is very good at sleight of hand, but he's known for being an illusionist, for doing the really, really big stuff.
Walking through the Great Wall of China.
Right, the Great Wall of China, making the Statue of Liberty
disappears.
So there's that type of magic. If you would think of like comedy magic, you would think of like the Amazing Jonathan, or even like a Penn and Teller. They could even be considered like a comedy duo.
Carrot Top?
Carrot Top is not a magician, but he's a prop comic that is the best prop comic in the world, to be honest with you.
Yeah, legend.
No one's.
Legend.
I can't think of another better prop comic than maybe Gallagher. That's in the same, because Gallagher was kind of a prop comic as well. But
yeah.
But no, I would say that Carrot Top is probably the most distinguished prop comic in history. So,
wow.
But that's the thing. There's all these little genres of magic and comedy, and it's just kind of where you fit in. Well, I kind of always just didn't want to get pigeonholed into one thing. I wanted to do it all. So that's why I created, that's why I do stunts like Harry Houdini with the Houdini 100 stunts and the television series on Discovery with Houdini's Last Secrets. That's why I created like 52 Up Close, because I'm such a fan of close-up sleight of hand. That's why I created In Plain Sight, because I love being on the big stages and doing the general, the mind reading and that type of stuff for audiences. So, and I'm also an actor. So when I was when I was working with the Cultural Trust and I was making these magic shows with them at this place called Liberty Magic, that was the theater that we created. So I created the In Plain Sight show to be my stand-up comedy magic show, and I incorporate a lot of like Pittsburgh anecdotes and stuff like that. But I then got asked, because of the Houdini stuff and all the connections I have, they then said, Lee, would you want to create a second magic show here about Harry Houdini?
Right.
And now I'm thinking, I'm out of my mind to do this. I'm going to have now 3 magic shows. Like, this is insane. But
all running concurrently.
Kind of concurrently at different times of the year in Pittsburgh. I do perform them at other places in the country occasionally, but for the most part, I try to stay here, because in 2015, I had been traveling the country like a madman for a decade. Like, as soon as I graduated college until 2015, I was doing hundreds of shows around the country every year. I was doing corporate events in colleges. I was touring the college market.
You were driving from Pittsburgh, living in Pittsburgh, and just driving to New York, driving to Philly, driving to Boston.
Well, what I would normally do, though,
DC.
Sometimes I would drive, but most times I would fly to another part of the country, and then I would rent a car, and then I would just stay in that part of the country for like weeks on end.
Fly East Coast, West Coast, or Florida. or
Yeah.
Arizona or Vegas.
I would like. I do love some good road trips occasionally. Like
Yeah.
I loved hitting all the schools on the East Coast because they were all drivable.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I had gotten to a point where I was getting flown everywhere, and it was nice. Is like because they would pick you up at the airport and take you to the thing, give you the hook you up. And
I want to know what your carry-on luggage looks like. As
oh my god, man, it sucked.
Flying magician.
It sucked. It sucked so bad. I always had to fly Southwest because I needed the 2 bags. I needed the 2 bags to fly free. You know what I mean? So, and dude, flying as a magician sucks. I have had my stuff rifled through every single time. I have stacks of the TSA slips. Going through TSA until they had pre-check, like I had become. Once I got pre-check, it got a little bit easier. But up until pre-check days, like going through,
rough, right?
I got detained multiple times. I had to always be very I always had to get there early because I knew it was going to happen. Because they would find random shit in my stuff, dude.
Birds just coming out of hats.
Well, I would have a lot of random crap in there, but
rabbits, just
in
living animals.
In 2003, I actually shut down Pittsburgh International once for about a solid 30 minutes, and it was all by a complete accident. I was going to the West Coast for like a month or two, and I decided to take a whole bunch of decks of cards with me, because I didn't want to have to buy them when I was out there. So I wrapped them in rubber bands and I put them in Crown Royal bags and I put them in my carry-on. But what I didn't realize is that I also had my headphones and my watch in the same bag. And so how it was all positioned on the X-ray machine,
like a bomb.
It looked like a bomb.
Yeah. I was going to say.
The blocks of cards looked like C4. So they shut down security. They were losing it. I thought I was going to jail. I honestly did. I thought I was going to be hauled off for some.
You had to put the watch in there.
I had my watch.
Watch.
They had said, they were like, listen, whatever you got in there, we're gonna have to detain you. Like, you're probably not getting on your flight, man. This looks like something. Like, I literally, they shut down all security. Like, I thought that I was going to jail. But needless to say, once they figured out it wasn't a bomb, and they let all the lines start going again, and I had to explain myself and that I was a magician, and then I was doing magic tricks for them, and finally everything was good, and I was making my flight. But and that's happened on multiple occasions. I actually had to perform magic for Canadian Mounties to get into Canada once because they weren't going to let me in.
Yeah, Canada can be strict. I grew up in outside Detroit, so for us it was we lived north of Canada, there. And you drive south across the Ambassador Bridge into Windsor when you're 19 and you want to be able to drink.
That's kind of what I was doing,
and they can be really tough.
Yeah, joke. I had been going over the Niagara part.
Yep,
and it was
through Buffalo.
It was right when I was I think it was right when I was 22. I think I was old enough to drink by this point. I'm trying to remember now precisely why, because I've been there I did this multiple times, but the one time we got detained, it was because the buddy that I was going with that had come with me. We had multiple friends, but the buddy that I was going with, he was a Marine, and he had just gotten out of the service, and he had given back his issued gun, right? So he did not have a gun on him.
Okay.
But when you go over the border, they ask you, they said, do you have any firearms? And he said no, but he handed him his military ID, thinking that it would expedite the process. Like, hey, I'm U.S. military, let me over.
Yeah.
He was not military, though, anytime. He had been discharged.
Okay.
So when they asked him if he had a gun in the car, he said no, because he didn't.
Right.
But when you give a military ID, you're issued a gun. So they assumed assumed he probably had one on him. So they took it as kind of like a little, maybe a white lie or something.
Right. He was being he was obscering the truth.
He was obscuring the truth, but even though
facetious.
he was telling the truth. So they then pulled us off to the side, made us all get out of the car. They all put us in our own little rooms. And then they said, and when the Mounties came into my room, they said, empty your pockets. And of course, my pockets are filled with decks of cards and 50-cent pieces and shit like that. So I'm whipping out all, and they're like, what is this crap, man? I'm like, I'm a magician. They're like, get the hell out of here, really? They're like, hold on. And they went and got all the other Mounties that were interviewing my buddies, and they brought them into me, and they said, let's see some shit. And I did a couple tricks for them, and they were like, oh, all right, you're amazing. We're going to let you into Canada.
Nice.
So I got us into Canada with some card tricks. So
that's huge.
Just random shit.
We all have a way to escape. I had to come up with my own special way to escape when I was scalping tickets at a Heat game once.
Oh boy, getting in trouble.
Yeah, I really wasn't scalping at all. I just had an extra ticket and like I didn't want to just have it go to waste. So I just offered it for free to a couple kids and they turned out to be undercover cops. And
Oh,
so
really?
they took me down into this little room.
Because you were
and,
giving away a free ticket?
yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah, it was pretty
that's
whack.
dumb, man. That's horrible.
It was pretty whack. But I was down there with like, other people who really belonged there.
Yeah, sure.
And I did not.
Yeah,
and
right.
I just had to make it clear. I'm like, guys, I'm a medical student.
Right.
I'm going to be a doctor like in 6 months.
Yeah.
I don't belong here.
Yeah, right.
Take these things off of me, please. Of course, you would have just.
I would have been able to get out of those, no problem. Yeah, that would have been easy.
You were also talking about how you have all these different styles.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you were in a bigger market, if you would have maybe been more pigeonholed into one particular style of magic.
I might have been if I was like in New York. I probably would have had to commit to something more just to pay the bills to live in that city. But because I grew up in Pittsburgh, I had, I had the flexibility, I think, to kind of do more things. Essentially, I was able to. I would always say I was like I would jet set. I got to call Pittsburgh home, and I would just fly out. I would do gigs. I would come right back. And so, therefore, having those opportunities to do that, it gave me opportunities to experiment with other things, and that's what got me into the acting world. And because I've done a lot of commercial work and doing all the television series that I have done over the time, that has played a key part in my career. And so, when I was creating like the Life and Death of Harry Houdini show for Liberty Magic, that one was going to be more about the writing that I have, my writing about Harry, my knowledge of him, but then it was my creativity with him. And I'll explain what I mean. So obviously, as the actor element, I could do the magic tricks. I kind of look like him. We're kind of around the same height.
Yeah, grow the hair out.
All I had to do is grow the hair out, part it down the middle, and the people see. This what's weird. What's nice about Harry Houdini is like even to this day, people when you say Harry Houdini don't have a actual image in their head of what he looks
true.
like.
So true. They just see a straight jacket.
They see a straight jacket.
Yep.
They don't have this. They don't have an actual image of his face. Whereas if you would say Elvis, you know what Elvis looks like. You got to look like Elvis. So with Harry, because he died so long ago, it's almost like the current people now don't have any information in their brains about what he would be. They don't even know what he sounds like, and that's because there's only one recording of his voice. And David Copperfield has that on a wax cylinder that he keeps in his library, in his magic library in Las Vegas, which I've heard with my own 2 ears. I've been in David Copperfield's actual magic library that we refer to as the Smithsonian of Magic because it is that insane. It is so impressive.
It's totally private.
It's totally private. Yeah, you can't go to it.
How'd you meet David?
So David is, he's a fan of all magic, a very big fan of Harry Houdini. And over the years, David has acquired a lot of Harry Houdini's actual artifacts from his career. Obviously all of his magic tricks, a lot of his books, a lot of his journals, his manuscripts. And he's also gotten other big magicians' collections that have passed on, that have had massive collections worth millions of dollars. And because David Copperfield has been a very, very successful entertainer, I mean, he still to this day does 650 shows at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. The guy is a freaking workhorse.
Wow.
But he is the most famous magician in the world. I would say he is as close, maybe him and David Blaine, I would say more David Copperfield for the international name recognition that Copperfield has, and maybe David Blaine for more of the physicality shit that David does.
Endurance
stunts. But Copperfield really is essentially the most successful magician of all time.
Why is he doing 650 shows? He has 20 properties in the Bahamas.
He's a billionaire.
He could be chilling.
I can tell you why. I've talked to him about it. He loves it. He loves magic. He loves it. He's obsessed. And I get it because I'm the same way. I love performing. We do. And I've always said I know when my exit date will be. Like I don't want to be, to be honest with you, I really don't want to be at that age doing that many shows. But then again, I don't know. I don't know what it would be like to be at that age to not doing any shows. I've kind of already committed to an exit point for my career. Like I plan on retiring from the art of magic at the age of 52. Because of,
it's a good number.
Good number, but
good enough.
But to be honest with you, it has to do with Harry Houdini, because Harry Houdini died at the age of 52. So he didn't get to continue performing into his, into his later 50s. So I figured, for me, for having 40, I would have at 52, I will have 42 years in the art of magic. That's enough for a lifetime.
What about 52 years in the art of magic?
Well, then I would be into my 60s, and I think at that point I want to be doing something else. I just think I
More
want to do.
acting, like Anthony
I don't.
Hopkins, like you just transition
I don't
into
know. I don't know what it'll be, but
later
I'll
in life.
figure. I know that's what's fun. I'll figure it out between now and then.
Have you done any film, or is it mostly TV shows?
I've done
Can you talk
TV.
about it a little bit? You have an agent, and
Yeah, agent, manager. I have a couple agents. I have a theatrical agent. I have a corporate agent. I have a manager. I had a college agent at one point. I've had multiple publicists over my time. Yeah, it's just kind of, that, but all that shit came from me learning that in college, learning, you kind of learn really quick, find a really good lawyer, find a really good accountant, find a really good manager. And these things are really hard to find. I mean, many actors, if they get lucky and you can stay with only one agent and one manager your entire life, like you're very, 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 very lucky. Most actors and entertainers do not have that option. They bounce from agency or agents to managers, and they ping pong around. I had been lucky. I met my manager and agent right out of college, and I formed a really great relationship with them, and and they've done me, they've been really good to me over the years. So I've never had a reason to ever want to switch out of it, My theatrical agent, like really amazing theatrical agent that has, always been there when I needed them. So there's, but those are that's like building your blocks, once you get that foundation of the right people in your corner and you then present these crazy ideas that you're going to go do, well, they're there to help you make them happen, And so with television, like when TV started to trickle into my life, they were a big component of it. Like they helped me, lock in the deals and get the money right. And like, and then of course, because at the end of the day, what did I just want to think about? I wanted to think about the on-camera shit.
Yep.
I didn't want to think about like the contracts and negotiations and shit like that. Even though I have the knowledge and the know-how to do that and to read contracts and to write my own contracts, and I have a degree in business. Like I know how to do this stuff, but at the same time, I don't have the time or even like the experience to do it all the time. That's what I want to let the pros do, and that's why I let them handle what they do.
One question I had is whether television, the smartphone, the constant high def cameras,
right?
How has that changed magic?
It has changed it a lot. I mean, obviously, you remember the days of like the masked magician, right? You remember those days? Like we were all pissed when Fox put those magic shows out, exposing all those tricks. These days, exposure is rampant. It's all over TikTok. It's all over YouTube. And in the magic world, there's nothing we can do anymore. We've stopped even trying to even stop it. Like before, there was people that wanted to really try to stop it. Now the younger generation that's coming up, they don't know. Like they don't know that that's not what you're supposed to do anymore. So they do it. They expose. But in a really strange world, like the ethics of magic is still very strong. I'm part of the International Brotherhood of Magicians. I've been a member since I was 21 years. Actually, I take that back. I've been a member since I was 18 years old of the It's called the IBM. The IBM, every year they have, the IBM is the largest worldwide organization for fellowship for magicians around the world. It has around 40,000 active participants, members. And in the but that's in the world. Now, don't get me wrong; those are 40,000 magicians, but that's not 40,000 professional magicians. That's like from your novice to your your collector to your birthday party magician, all the way up the line to your David Copperfields.
You go to the meeting and it's just a room full of wizards. Everybody's got the staff, the cloak, big white beard.
I wish it was that cool, man. It's not. It is though. It is like you go and we would, when I was a kid, I would go to these little meetings and I would hang out with these older magicians. But it's a way to like find those mentorships. It's a way to like talk to these people that have done it for years and know these secrets and know the art, and they can pass on their information to you and help you. And that's what it's really about. But they also have conventions. So there are magic conventions around the world where magicians, we go and perform at them, but we also show you how it's done. It's the only time we'll do a show and go, okay, want to know how it's done? This is what I did.
Oh, wow.
And we'll show you the work on it. That's really what it is. It'd be like a musician like writing a song and then showing you how they put all the notes together. That's what these magic conventions are. So what is super cool is when I was in high school, I went to my first IBM Magic Convention. It was in Orlando, Florida. I was 17 years old when I was at it. And the reason why I was even there in Orlando was that the international president, so the main guy, the big head honcho, was actually going to be the new. They put in a new president every year, and the new one for that year was from Pittsburgh. So a magician from Pittsburgh named Jack Greenberg, he became the International Brotherhood of Magicians president for 1 year. So I wanted to be there, because the Pittsburgh ties. Now
he was associated with the Cuckoo's Nest, or is just somebody you knew? Or?
No, he was kind of the main guy in Pittsburgh that ran the local chapter in Pittsburgh, the IBM chapter in Pittsburgh. So he was like the main magician for that, and and he was plugged in with all the magic community of Pittsburgh. But he was now representing it on the international level. So I was at that convention as a kid. Now, fast forward, that magic convention has been all over the world. It is every year since then, since I was like 17. That was 23 years ago. This summer, that magic convention, that IBM International Magic Convention, is coming to Pittsburgh.
Right here.
It's here.
At the convention center.
It's not at the convention center. It's going to be at the Wyndham.
Oh, cool.
Downtown.
Yeah.
And for a week in July, the second week of July, Pittsburgh will literally turn into Hogwarts. There will be 1,000 magicians from all over the world running around downtown Pittsburgh, and they're gonna be performing and and talking about the theories and all that fun stuff. And I will also be performing on it as well. I'll be headlining one of the days, and I'll be doing my show 52 Up Close.
Which week is it?
So it starts on July 12th and runs through the 15th.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing
exciting.
We'll be doing that this summer. What else? There's so many other things that are happening right now. But
yeah. So one other question before I lose it is about Houdin and about the kind of technical side of magic. It also has to do with traveling.
Mm-hmm.
So you were talking about the cards and the appearance of a bomb, but my understanding is Houdin was actually a watchmaker.
He was, yeah.
And so, isn't there a huge part of magic that's the craft of building things,
there is,
of creating devices, and being a tinkerer?
It is.
And
that's how it all works.
Your own signature.
It really is how everything works. Now, sleight of hand's different, but the tinkering aspect of the creating of these little props and these little miracle devices. And to be honest with you, like I just played golf the other day with Bob Pompiani in his golf outing, and I do it every year. But this year I had Steve Blass as in one of my foursomes in my foursome, and he was a Pittsburgh Pirates pitcher, and we were talking about how he was on the 1970s winning World Series teams, Steve Blass, and we were talking about the Astros and how the Astros won the World Series, but I don't know if you know this, but they got accused of cheating.
Yep, that's right. They were using like iPhones to copy signs.
They were using actually magic devices. Yeah. I don't think the world like understood. Like they just said it was like kind of like an iPhone type thing. It wasn't. It was a magic device. It was a magician device. They were using magic devices to steal signals and talk to each other. And so that's what I mean. It's like it's kind of crazy how those Robert Houdin days that he created these little intricate things, how far it has come, and almost to the point where now people are trying to get an advantage with magic to win World Series. That's kind of cool. So I think that's kind of wild that that has happened. But back to Robert Houdin, yes, he was a very well-known French watchmaker, and some of the watches and apparatuses that he made are some of the most insane, amazing things I've ever seen, and a lot of them are owned by David Copperfield.
Wow!
And he has something he has this piece of magic that was created by Robert Houdin, known as the lemon tree.
Yeah,
or it's actually there's the orange tree. There's a version called the lemon tree, but it's the orange tree that he has. That was the original Robert Houdin version, and where it's a blooming bush. And then all of a sudden, oranges appear.
He plants it and then throws the oranges to you in the audience.
Yes.
And you can eat them.
And they're real oranges, yeah. It's kind of crazy. I saw it live with my own two eyes. I saw the Robert Houdin version. Copperfield performed it for us, like
Holy shit.
when we were on one of the tour with him when he was showing us the museum. Yeah, but so an even crazier thing, like I also am a big collector of magic antiquities, and I have quite a few Houdini things. Like I have a couple. I brought one with me today to show you.
No
Actually,
fucking way.
yeah, man, I brought one with me. I'll show it to you. But I'll tell you about the one I have. I have a Robert Houdin. I have something from a Robert Houdin. It's over 200 years old. So Robert Houdin is not only the father of like that modern magic back in the French days, in those early late 1800s. He also would do escapes. So that's why Harry was really influenced by him. Is he would do something called the box escape. And what it was is he would be shackled, put into a box, a lot like what Harry then created later on called the metamorphosis, where he would switch places. Well, this is what Robert Houdin didn't do that version. He would just get in a box, he would be shackled, and then a tarp would be put around the box, and then he would escape a moment later. But during that moment, he would have music played, right? Now back then they didn't have sound systems; they had piano players, and so Robert Houdin had sheet music that would technically be his music for that. It would be like his track, right? For that piece of magic.
Yeah.
And he would give that to the piano player and say, hey, when I do this trick, play this piece of music. So the sheet music that Robert Houdin created that he used for the box escape,
Yeah.
I own the actual sheet music. Robert Houdin sheet music from the box escape.
Have you had?
It's a one of one.
That's insane. Have you had someone play it, or
I have
are
not.
you musical at all?
No, I'm not. It's funny you said that because I just showed it to a friend of mine, and my buddy was like, "We got to call a buddy of mine who's a piano player, and he'll play it for you." And I was like, "All right, we got to line this up." So
Yeah, I would take it to Busgrades.
I'm gonna get somebody to do it for me eventually. But so I have that, and then there's a couple other really cool things that I have that
That's amazing.
have not wound up in Copperfield's collection. There are other Houdini collectors out there.
Do you worry that maybe some of this stuff is so historically important that it should be in a museum where people can see it?
Yes and no. I think some things should remain in museums, but I also think that there should be some things that are left in private hands. But like what David has, like his collection is totally insane. Is like it's unbelievable. I'm glad what he has done with it and what he plans to do with it, because it's almost like he is preserving it for the future magicians of the world.
Yeah,
it's what it's really.
But
so
he's gonna put it into a museum when he dies.
He's my understanding of it is that he is having a trust created with his name, and it will then be under his name's trust, and he will be leaving it. He's essentially leaving his magic museum to the trust that will then oversee it after he's gone. But yes, he owns a private island in the Bahamas, and he has all kind of really fun things. But the magic museum that he has is totally insane, and he does not plan to let it be available to the public. It's going to be magicians only. Now, at the moment, the only way in is through David. He is the only way in through the front door. So it isn't like a ticket you can go buy and try to get in and see. It's not like that. Actually, how I got into my first time of seeing the museum was kind of crazy. I decided that after I wrapped on my TV series, so my TV series was Houdini's Last Secrets. We shot it on Discovery, and my co-star on the film or on the series, his name was George Hardin. Now George is he's the grandnephew of Harry Houdini. So I'm literally in the magic. I'm literally in the Houdini family. So I filmed the series with him. When we were done shooting the show, about 6 months later, I asked George, I said, hey, man, I was like, now, obviously, my whole goal in this was I wanted to take George Hardin. I wanted him to see David Copperfield live, because that would be the comparable of him seeing his uncle live.
The closest thing
you think you could come to Harry Houdini. And so, but
all those different types of magic, though, right?
Right.
Different styles.
So, but what I wanted to do is I wanted him to see Copperfield, and I wanted to introduce him to David Copperfield, because I know what a big Houdini fan David is. That I think that I thought it'd be super cool to put a Houdini in front of him, because I know what would happen next. I would get
You get your way in.
I'd get my way into the museum.
He knows about your little ploy.
He does, yeah. He knew. Because I'll tell you how he knew. Because when it happened, when I took Harry George to the show in Las Vegas, we went to the MGM Grand. We went to the Magic. We went to see Copper David's show. We were blown away by the show. Afterward, we're in the to meet him. We're waiting, and I told George, I said, we're going to be last. He's like, okay. And so as we went through the line, we got up to David. David is very much like, he's a performer. He comes down, he smiles, he signs autographs, he smiles, he signs autographs, he smiles, and then he's done. And when he got to us, he was kind of in that show mode, hey, let's take a photo. I'll sign your autograph. Great meeting you. And he's walking away. I mean, it's like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And as David was beelining for the door, I was like, he didn't recognize George. I was like, crap. So I yelled, I said, hey, David. And David turned around and I said, I then went up next to him and I said, do you recognize this face? And I was putting my hands up next to George's face.
Yeah.
And he's like, and that's when I watched Copperfield actually recognize that he was a Houdini.
Wow.
And then he was like, oh, wow, okay. It was like one of those moments where I didn't know what the hell was going to happen. But at the same time, I had to take my shot because I couldn't miss this opportunity for those two to meet each other.
Yeah.
And as soon as he was like, "Wow, I have something I have to show you guys," I knew what that meant. That meant, "Hey, come to my museum and let me show you the Houdini stuff."
Yeah, yeah.
So
in Vegas.
Yeah. And what David did next is he took my phone and he put an address in my maps, and he said, "Hey, can you meet me here? Can you and George go get an Uber and meet me here in 30 minutes. And of course, we're like, yeah, whatever. So we go outside, we get an Uber, and then we're driving to this mysterious location where this museum is. It's like secret. And we get there, and the gate goes up, and as our Uber's driving to the gate, David Copperfield's in the parking lot telling us where to park. He's like, hey, swing it in. And my Uber driver looks back at me. He's like, is that David Copperfield? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, what the fuck is happening? And then I'm like, this guy's is related to Harry Houdini. And of course, so we get out of the car, and then we proceed to have our minds blown for the next 4 hours with David.
Jesus.
Him showing us all this incredible stuff in the museum. So like I said, he has everything. He has the water torture cell. He has the voice that's on tape or on the wax cylinder. He has so many just amazing things from Harry's iconic career. But there's one thing that I own that is not in his museum. It's in my personal museum. I'll show it to you right now. It's really cool.
Wow.
So obviously, with Houdini 100, you know that I'm a fan of Harry Houdini photographs, the one being in downtown Pittsburgh. So I'm a fan of Harry Houdini photographs as well as other things that I have. But this is something I have that's really cool. What this is a copper plate of Harry Houdini.
Holy shit.
And it's on a piece of wood. Now, this block of wood, this piece of copper, was dropped into a camera, and then they exposed Harry Houdini when he was sitting there at the mic. If you can see, he's sitting at a microphone, right? So he was doing a radio interview. Now, the interesting thing about that is technically the negative. Okay, so they pulled the newspaper that took this photograph that day when Harry was sitting there. They obviously pulled a photo off that copper plate and then used it in the newspaper the next day to promote his appearance in that town.
Oh, that's wild.
Okay, but
so is this the type? Was this a deuterograph or a There's a name for this.
It's not a tin type. It's not what you think of as a tin type. It was one of the cameras back in 1920s where you would load this plate in.
Yep.
It then has the flash bulb, puts the image on it, and then you then rip. And then they had a process of ripping the image off of the negative to then use to create the the actual prints of it.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, this being the negative. Which is super cool because it's it is the original. It is
that's incredible.
But what's amazing about it is its date. So this was taken on October 13th, 1926, which means 17 days later he would be dead. So which makes this one of the final images ever taken of Harry Houdini publicly. There are other ones out there, but the reason why I wanted this one so much was because he's actually sitting at a microphone, right?
Yeah.
And radio
Yeah.
was conceived here in Pittsburgh. So I thought it was super cool, the connection with radio and Harry Houdini in Pittsburgh. Now, this was taken in Schenectady, New York, at a little radio station in Schenectady, New York, when he was doing a press appearance there.
Yeah.
So
but obviously not recorded.
no, there's no recording of it, unfortunately. So I can't get the actual, because like I said, there's only one known recording of his voice. So that back then in 1926, they wouldn't have captured it.
Can you describe his voice at all?
It's a little bit high pitched. I can't do it. I've tried. I can't do. And to be honest with you, because I play Harry on stage, I don't want to actually do a bad interpretation of him.
No. I'm just
but his voice was a slightly higher pitched than mine.
Yeah. No accent.
No,
he's like Midwest, kind of like us, where you don't really have a.
He didn't really have
distinct accent.
Any accent. No, that was noticeable, not like a New York accent, because he spent half of his life in New York. And half of his life, actually, if you break down his life, it's kind of interesting. He obviously 52 years old. He lived 26 years in the 1900s. He lived 26 years in the 1800s. He lived 26 years broke and poor and not famous. He lived 26 years famous, rich, and
what an incredible story.
Yeah, right. And
you can do it literally like a deck of cards.
Right, like a deck of cards.
Where you tell the story with each chapter of his life. Each year is another card.
Right. He actually had he had 52 chapters of his life because he died at 52. So, and there's all these little, unique things about Harry's life and his magic and his, his charisma and his,
Did he do card tricks?
Oh yeah, he was the king of cards at one point. Yeah. So he was very good at giving himself these nicknames. Was he a good card magician? In my world, he was okay. Okay, I can go on record and say I'm a better card magician than Harry, but he was still very good. But he would give himself these names. He called himself the King of Cuffs, the King of Cards, and it was all about being and that was kind of like those names kind of came about because of like the Great Bambino and those names of Babe Ruth days, and that was what they did back then. They gave you these weird little nicknames. Even today though, that's still part of our society. We still give people nicknames all the time. And
but you've never had one.
I've never taken a nickname. No,
we'll see. We'll see what we can do today. We'll work on it.
I don't know if I want one, man. I like just my name. But no. So Harry's all these little nuances about his life. I was always fascinated by as a kid, and as and being a magician today. So I've been able to acquire quite a few of his. Is
this an eBay purchase or is there a good story?
No. So these types of things don't come up very often. They go in private auctions.
Yep.
And in these private auctions are David Copperfield, the big boys are there. So you're bidding against the big boys. So if David wanted this, he would have got it.
Wow.
But I lucked out, and I was able. Now, don't get me wrong. There are Houdini collectors all around the world. He's that popular still, even over 100 some years later. And I just lucked out, man. I just,
cool.
I put my eggs in one basket and went for it, and I was able to lock it down. So.
That's awesome. I don't want us to get too derailed, but if you show photographs, I have to talk about my grandpa, because he was a huge photographer here in Pittsburgh. He actually had one of the world's best collections of these stereoscopic viewers. Which are
okay,
the original 3D.
Yeah.
And I have one of his devices behind me. I'll show you.
That's funny you say that because Houdini had one of those as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were very popular at one point.
Yeah.
In France, like the Queen of France.
Oh yeah, let me see this.
From his actual collection. He's got a little latches on the front.
Latches on the front. I see it. Oh, that's wild.
Are there some slides in there?
Yeah. So I see the slides.
Yeah, they're not the best, and obviously, this device is not one of his best.
Right.
But it's the one I have.
So he made these.
No. He would buy them from France. He would buy them from auctions, like you said. He would buy them anywhere he could find them. And he had hundreds in his personal collection.
Wow, that's cool.
The whole collection was about to go to this museum of photos and antiquities.
Yeah.
which is on the north side, right next to what's the guy's name? I think it's called. Oh shit, I, I can't remember the name. Benny's maybe.
Not sure.
I
No, this
can't
is really
remember the
cool,
name.
man. I never saw one of those like that.
It works. I'll show you the way it works here. But the guy has a camera store, and then he also runs the antiquity museum next door. He was going to. This goes up like this. This goes like this. And based on your focal length, you can see the 3D.
Oh, okay. Now I see what they were trying
The fancier ones can adjust the intraocular distance, and you can like move the slide back to try to get the 3D, but it's not the best one.
Wild.
Do you see 3D?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, this was like the original before we had digital 3D, before we had red and blue. This was the only way to do 3 dimensions. And it's interesting, actually, because the new Apple spatial computer can take photos in 3D now.
Right. That thing's wild.
It's going to change the game.
It is changing the game. I'm kind of obsessed with that stuff, too. And so, because I'm already thinking about how do you do magic in that world? And how do you,
Whoa.
Yeah. I've already been thinking about it, man. I've already been playing with ideas and thinking about, like, what the future of magic looks like and what it would look like in that space and how you could be, maybe one of the first people doing it in that space. So,
augmented reality.
Augmented reality. It's funny. I already shot some stuff for augmented reality. There's a buddy of my in town named David Kelly, and he had hit me up, and he had the camera equipment able to do it. So he wanted to play with it. And he called me up. He said, "Hey, you want to try something?" And so we went and we filmed some stuff where he pitched it to me this way. He wanted it to be like an ad at a bus stop, like where you could take your phone, because your phone can technically do augmented reality.
Yeah, for sure. It's got an engine in it.
It has the ability to do it. A lot of people don't use it for that. Obviously, like Pokemon Go, though, was the big.
They were the first, and then the Hogwarts game. You mentioned Hogwarts earlier.
Hogwarts game, right? So there's aspects of it being used, and so what we did is we filmed it so that if you were, we never took it to market, but we played with it, because we wanted to see what it looked like. Like the idea would be like if you were sitting at a bus stop, and there was a thing on the
QR code
that you could scan and launch it, and then in your phone, it would be me talking to you, kind of in the in the AR world,
so cool.
Or I would be saying, "Hey, do you want to see a magic trick?" And then I could say, "Hey, I'm going to go through the card, say stop." And of course now obviously it's filmed, so but at the same time, if I went through the cards and I went, "Hey, say stop," like, and I went,
you could record 52 versions.
Well, you could, but you may not. You wouldn't. We wouldn't have to. And
you wouldn't necessarily need to.
What I mean was what we would do is we would do a version where I could take a deck of cards, like, and this is what we filmed. Is essentially I was spinning a pack of cards on my finger, like. Let me get it going here. I gotta warm these up. I was spinning a deck of cards like this on the camera. They were filming it, and then I was talking first person to the camera, like as if I'm talking to you in the augmented reality space.
Yeah.
And then I would take the deck of cards, I would pop them out, and I would say, "Here, I'd like to do an interactive card trick with you right now." And I'd say, "Okay, I want you to just say stop." I dropped one. Just say stop as I go through the cards, and I would do this. I'd say, "Oh wait. You didn't say stop. Hold on. I went too fast. Let's start again." Now that I'm prepping the audience. I'm prepping the person. And then of course now they have a chance to say stop. Then they would say stop. Okay, and then I could show them the card, right? I would show them the card to the camera, and I could put the card back into the deck and give the cards a few cuts and even give them a little shuffle, right? Little shuffle. And then I would say, "Listen, I'll take a random card. We'll take like the 7 of spades," and I would show them the 7 of spades, and I'd just say, "Think of your card," and if they think of it, they would think it. I would say, and then I would turn it over, and it would be their 8 of clubs, right? And it would be their card. And so we filmed that type of stuff, but it's just because the creativity. It's like I can't put it down in a way. If there's something new,
I love it.
new to explore that's magical. I'm all in, because I'm always finding unique ways to push the art, and that's what it's about.
That's so cool. Thanks for showing me that.
Yeah, man.
I remember, I think last time I saw you must have been Bonix at the Wiz show.
Oh yeah, the Wiz show. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was fun.
Yeah.
Man. Thanks for bringing me down to your guys' seats. That was really fun watching that with
Oh
you
hell
guys.
yeah, man! That's right. We were at with Wiz, and my girlfriend was there, and I've done magic for Wiz in the past many times over the years. Yeah, I remember the day I went viral on what's that? World Star Hip Hop.
Okay.
Yeah, because
For blowing Wiz Khalifa's mind?
yeah, for blowing Wiz Khalifa's mind. I went viral on World Star. Yeah, that was a funny day, man. Because that was a video that, like, I was backstage with Wiz and Bonix in one of the cities we were in. It was not Pittsburgh, and you know, it was one. I've done magic for Wiz a bunch of times over the years, and it just time the cameras happened to be rolling. Bonix, you know, Wiz was smoking weed, and he was high, and it got good reactions, and he was blown away, you know, all that good shit. So it was good time. So he had this so Bonix uploaded that footage to YouTube, and it was like a couple hours later that my phone was just like having contusions, man. It was like, I was like, what is happening right now? And of course, Bonix I didn't know what was going on. Bonix called me. He goes, Lee. He goes, are you getting a bunch of notifications right now? I go, well, something's happening. He goes, well, it's because you're going viral on World Star right now. And I was like, what?
World Star.
World Star, yeah. So, yeah, he goes, yeah, I posted that video of you doing magic for Wiz, and he goes, it got picked up by World Star. It's on their main page right now. It's like the #1 video. So I went on YouTube. I went on World Star. I was like watching myself on World. I was like crazy thing. Dude, the funniest thing though was reading the comments.
Oh yeah,
the comments were insane. They were crazy.
Yeah.
But you know what it did though? It like people from all over the world were finding me. You know, like people from Australia. I mean, that was just the power of Wiz Khalifa, and you know, and he's an amazing guy too. But
I can't believe he got signed at 16. I was just looking back at his career because he released a new album, which is actually really good. See Ya, and it's the first album that he's done where I was like actually really excited, probably since Cushion OJ. And
okay,
he's got like West Coast beats. He's really writing again. It's
wow. Is this his recent album?
I think it came out yesterday.
Oh, okay. That's why I haven't heard about it yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'll check it out.
Yeah. So you're so you blew up on World Star, but what year was it? Did it help with your jet setting, or had you already kind of settled back into Pittsburgh?
You know what? This was when I was touring, so this helped.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was a big moment because I would go to colleges and there would be like kids that were like, "Wait, we saw you on World Star." I'd be like, "Oh my god!" Like, yeah, that was back in my college touring days. So that was when I was like on the grind of just doing magic tricks for celebrities. I was constantly doing tricks for celebrities. Like, I've done magic for like Jack Black and Robbie Krieger of The Doors and like Alice Cooper and Aaron Paul and like I could drop all kind of names for you, but that was because like I got hooked up with an artist from Los Angeles. Named Scotty Medlock, who actually recently passed away, but he was this incredible painter, and he was like the painter for the PGA Tour. So he was this internationally known painter for like anything you like those like those images of like Tiger Woods like on 18 putting, like winning the Masters and shit, like those when those guys were like on what was my buddy, it was Scotty Medlock. He was the guy that was actually on the 18th green like live painting. And those images have become like iconic about with Tiger and Jack Nicklaus and stuff.
Yeah.
So Scotty Medlock, I knew him through another performer, and I got the link with him, and he really, really liked me. He loved my, the magic and my whole story. So he said, "Listen," he goes, "I have this charity event that I do. It's a music and golf event." And you play golf? I was like, yeah, I play golf. He's like, you like music? I'm like, I love music, of course. He's like, well, then you're in. He's like, well, what do you want me to do? He goes, well, I want you to come out and have a good time. He goes, it's for St. Jude's Hospital. He goes, it's a star-studded affair. He goes, you're going to meet all kind of interesting people. I did magic for Gene Simmons the first time I was ever there. Yeah, let that sink in.
Yeah.
But he says, what I want you to do is, he goes, I want you to just do magic for the celebrities. He goes, and I want you to, enjoy the concert and play some golf. And so that's what I would do. I'd go out to LA every year and I would go and do this crazy event where I would network with all these giant movie stars.
Yeah. But you don't cheat. You like give yourself mulligans and make
on the golf course
where they don't belong. And
no, man, no. I play straight up. But it's it's funny. It's so cool to play with these random celebrities like Alice Cooper. I got to play a couple holes of golf with him. He is an incredible golfer.
Oh wow,
like amazing golfer. Like a lot of these guys are really big into golf. So it was cool to like be on the golf course with them, and then be back in like their setting where they were setting up for the show, because that's what it was. It was a golf event, and then it was a party where it was a concert. And like Robbie Krieger, who's a founding member of the Doors, I'd get to hang out with him, and like I'd be like, tell me about Jim Morrison. He would tell me about Jim Morrison. It was like crazy.
So many references
Yeah.
within the podcast here. So first of all, Alice Cooper, you earlier were talking about great showmen and promoters and self-promoters.
Yeah.
Alice Cooper was one of the smartest self-promoters.
Right.
They would stage like I forget what it was, but they would have things where it was like they were breaking the law. Like they would have a tour bus break down in the middle of the city, and like the cops would get called and things like that or whatever.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah, there was all kinds of wild like promotional stuff that he would do.
Stuff. I never knew Cooper. Alice did some of the stuff. I mean, I loved what he always did on stage.
Yeah,
because he had a lot of like magic references. He obviously would do the straitjacket. He didn't do it like a straitjacket escape. He would just do it as more of like a theatrical thing on stage.
Yeah,
but he would incorporate magic tricks into his shows. Like so did a lot of big stars like Michael Jackson. Like
the way that they do the elevation, right? That's a magic trick.
It's a magic trick. I do it. I used to do it.
Yeah, but I've learned how they pulled that one off, I think.
Well, it's called the lean illusion. There's various methods on it.
Okay,
but the one that he was using was the customized shoes with the stage.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, it's like because I do it. Like I used to do it. Like I did it as a viral video in Pittsburgh once, where I was doing it in Market Square. And people were like losing their shit because I was like just standing there, and I was like on my phone with the earbuds in, and I would be I'd be leaning, and like people were just like walking by, like what the
45 degrees.
Yeah, 45 degree. Yeah. And so I was doing it in Market Square, that was like a magic trick that was developed for Michael Jackson by a magician, and Michael worked in other big magic tricks into his shows, and he worked with big time illusion builders, the guys I know that would work with him, and like I know other guys that would work with like Kanye West. Like Kanye would went back before he was doing these other tours. He was really big into magic and having magicians around him. It was really interesting.
I've seen most of his tours. I'm like a Kanye stan. The closest thing I saw to magic was when he did the floating platform.
Floating platform was something
where he was chained to it,
right,
so that he couldn't fall off, and then he could lean all the way out, so that he could kind of like rap to the crowd without falling over.
Which one was that, by the way? That
was Pablo.
Pablo tour. Yeah, that's right.
So Life of Pablo, he was just on this platform. But the kind of the coolest thing about being at the actual show, I saw it in Miami with my buddy Ant Smith, is that underneath the platform,
it was all clear.
It was empty because everybody wanted to get pictures.
Oh, right.
So, or initially, or they at least wanted to see him. There were a couple things that were magical about it. One was he actually set it up so that everybody in the crowd got their pictures and got it out of the way.
Oh, okay.
So he would angle the stage and then bring it real close to each section one at a time, so everybody could get their beautiful pictures of him. And then he just did the party. And once everybody had their phones down, it completely transformed the situation.
Right. Yeah. Phones are such a big part of social culture and events. And
but he thought about it, I think, in some way. Maybe I was just imagining it. And then the party underneath the platform was just sick. It was a mosh pit because there was all this open space. Everybody else wanted to watch him, and the people underneath were just losing it.
I had a buddy that was at the one in Hershey, Pennsylvania. PA. He was at that show, and he had some incredible photographs. Like, being underneath it. Yeah, I saw that. It was amazing.
I remember Yes Jules was under there with us. A couple other references, all the golf stuff. So there's been 3 other big golfers on the podcast. I'm thinking PDC and Bamboo easily.
Oh, that golfers, right? Yeah, right.
They both are into it. And then the one other thing that I don't know if there was a third. And then you mentioned the Doors, and I interviewed this guy, another local musician named Sasha Miranda.
Okay.
And when I asked him Beatles or Rolling Stones, he said the Doors.
Oh wow, okay. Doors totally fan. I was a Doors fan growing up too. I always heard my dad listening to the Doors music, and when I got asked to come out and perform for Robbie Krieger, I was like, what the hell? Like, this is crazy. Like, because I grew up on their music, and like I knew. And my dad was like always would tell me like, oh yeah, like Robbie wrote the music, like, and I would go back and do my research, and then when I realized, like, he wrote, like, Light My Fire and, like, did he literally wrote the music for that stuff. Like, he was the creator of that
Yeah,
stuff. And
not the lyrics. Jim Morrison would have done
Jim
the lyrics.
wrote,
Like he was the
actually,
poet.
but he did add a lot of it. He did do some writing on some of the poetry of it as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's right. Yeah, he has some writing credits on some of Jim's stuff.
Cool.
They collaborated. So they were like the John and Paul, I guess, in a way. Ray Manzarek was the guitarist, and I'm trying to think of the other guy.
The keyboard player was the one that Sachem was really into.
That was Ray Manzarek.
Okay.
Yeah.
He kept on talking about, I guess it's organ. It was like a Hammond B6 or Hammond B5. I don't remember.
I don't know what he played.
Which number it is.
But when we would go, when they would have the actual event, so Robbie, of course, founding member, and then they would bring in this guy that was a Jim Morrison lookalike.
Whoa.
And oh my God, man, it was like being at the Whiskey A Go, like in the 1968, like
Crazy.
watching the Doors live. Like, and there was only like 150 people at this thing.
That's not
like, it's like a private concert, like a private Doors concert. And then, of course, you would have like, dude, it was just Chicago. The whole band of Chicago was there.
Cool.
Boston, like.
Oh, I got to see them. I got to see them in South Florida. That was actually really fun.
They were correct, dude. It was amazing, and it's like an all-star jam band, and like I said, Gene Simmons and Kiss, they were there. I was on Gene Simmons' show because of that. I wound up on his television series.
I was just reading about somebody he had dated like early in his career, maybe like Madonna or something.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I was trying to remember who it was the first time you mentioned it, but he was also Jewish, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Their band is super interesting. Detroit Rock City.
Mm-hmm.
It is a fantastic movie, first of all, where they're all trying to get to a Kiss concert. Have you seen this one?
Oh, yeah, I've seen it, yeah.
They beat themselves up. They beat each other up because they can't get into the show, and that was their plan.
Right.
They give the mushroom pizza to the priest.
Oh, that's right. Okay, now I remember all the stuff.
Detroit Rock City. So what else is there to do in Magic or in your career? I mean, what else have you left on the table?
Whew. I got a couple more things brewing. I always have something going. I can't talk too much about what I'm working on that's coming up down the range, but at the moment, I'm just really focusing on, bringing back the Houdini show to Liberty Magic this fall. I have more television that's in development that I can't talk about. The one thing I can tell you about is that about the pandemic and where I was in my career at that moment and what happened. And what'll be coming, because everything got messed up. It knocked everything off kilter, like with everybody. Mine was really weird though, because at the moment that the pandemic was about to happen, and so we can go back to exactly of
March 2020.
Let's go to January of 2020.
Yeah, when I got my first dose.
That's when I got sick.
Or
too.
second dose.
I got sick in January in 2020. I was sick as a dog.
With COVID?
With COVID, yes. This was before the world even knew about it. This was before it even came out in China, because that was on the 29th of January. And but during that,
so this was 2019 then.
So
because I was vaccinated 2020.
No, January 2020 is. So the pandemic started March 2020.
That was when the shutdown started.
That's when the shutdown
But
started.
the disease was already brewing in 2019.
Yes, the disease was brewing in 2019. So when did you have it?
When did I get sick or when did I get vaccinated?
No, when did you get sick?
I got sick in 2021
okay.
or 2022 at a conference in
so
South Florida.
I had one of the first doses of COVID, bro.
You were patient zero.
I was patient zero, man.
For all of Pittsburgh.
And you want to know what's even scarier is not only was I like really a patient zero, like I just thought I had like a really bad flu. Yeah. I was really sick though. I was so sick that at that same time in January of 2020, I had just signed my new deal with Discovery Channel. And we were in development of producing a new show for me, and it was an 8-episode deal for international. It was going to be another international show, 8 episodes. We were going to go to China. We were going to go to Argentina. We were going to We were going to shoot a different episode in every country. So how this worked though is that we were developing the ideas in late 2019. And in January 2020, I was supposed to be writing the episodes. So I took on the
Oh, wow.
writing because I have the mat. It was a new show for me. Like they can only do so much. Like they could scout locations and I could give them ideas. But at the same time, to get the finer details, I knew all that stuff. So I was essentially writing. I was trying to work on each episode, and that was in January. So, but I got sick. So here I'm supposed to be writing these episodes throughout the month of January for this new series I'm trying to create with the network, and I'm sick as a dog, and I couldn't write because I was that sick.
Wow.
But at the same time of being very, very, being on the couch and just dealing with a man, as I was calling it, a man flu,
cold. Yeah,
a man flu. I was also talking to other entertainers that were in the same predicament as me, like that. Because I'll be honest, Januaries for entertainers are downtimes mostly. Like Januaries we usually take January because we work so hard in December with all the private events and stuff like that. January is when we all kind of take a break.
Right.
So I was sick, but I'm supposed to be writing television episodes. And I started talking to other magicians around the country, and we started to talk about what was happening in China. And then, we started putting 2 and 2 together. And then that's when I was like, I think I had this shit, you know?
Yeah.
And then, of course,
you didn't get tested, but
no,
there was no test.
There was no test, I then sounded like a crazy person to my family and to everybody around me because remember, I'm now the one that's sitting on my phone all day, scrolling, learning about whatever the hell's going on in the world, interacting with other entertainers and I have international friends. I have friends that were over in China. I have friends that were over in Japan. And we're sending each other DMs and they're sending me videos of stuff that's leaking and coming out of China. And I'm now seeing these crazy videos that show the world being very apocalyptic. And at the same time, I was kind of fooled by it because I didn't want to believe that was real. I thought it was a marketing ploy for a movie.
Wow.
That's what I thought was happening.
A lot of people thought that. Right?
It looked a little fishy, but then it turned out to be real. And then, of course, in the month of February, when I'm supposed to be now, I'm now healthy again, and I'm back to writing the episodes. I sound like a crazy person to all my friends or my family because I'm saying that what is happening in China is going to happen in the United States. So I was kind of like calling it.
Sounding the alarm.
I was sounding the alarm.
Yeah.
And so I then I had to get back into this writing, and so so as I was talking to the people that were working with the production company, we then focused on plotting the shoot for the pilot. So we wanted to start to film the pilot, so we had to get a date on the books. Well, the date we got on the books was the final week of March.
Oof.
So and we were going to film that in Austin, Texas. That was where the episode 1 was going to shoot.
Yeah.
So we were now preparing. We're working on this first pilot episode. It's supposed to happen in end of March. Obviously, as we get closer and closer, the world shuts down March 13th. That's kind of the day the world stopped. That Friday the 13th, and then of course we never made it to that. So the show, it didn't get filmed at that point. So what happened is throughout the COVID process, I then had to shut down my theater, 52 Up Close at the hotel, couldn't do it. The Liberty Magic Theater, that I had just done 100 performances of in 2019 to open it up with 2 shows, we had to shut down. All my corporates that I had booked all over the country, they were all wiped out. So I lost every piece
all
of
your income streams.
All my
were
income
gone.
streams were gone.
You don't have like real estate.
I do have real estate.
stock.
I do have all that stuff, but
But
I
the
don't
stocks
wanna-
weren't so great either.
I don't want to be selling my assets.
No, of course.
I want to be sitting on my assets for a very long time. But at that same time, like I just watched my entire year of income
Yeah, the revenue stream disappeared.
overnight.
Yeah. There wasn't an option for like Zoom comedy shows but you were doing some stuff.
I did, yeah. So I went into doing Zoom magic shows for a little bit. I was not a big fan of it because it was not what I signed up for. I need the physical interaction. Me being locked into a screen and worrying about the Wi-Fi going off. Like that's not what I want to be doing.
Yeah, totally. I feel the same way about the DJing.
But I did it because at the time we kept being being told that it's, flatten the curve.
Yeah,
2
yeah.
months,
2
3
weeks to
months.
slow the spread.
Yeah, right.
6 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah, it was
6 years to erase the
the memories. Yeah, the nightmares of that place. So as we got into that, I transitioned. I did the online stuff for as long as I could put up with it.
Yeah.
And then, because there were clients that that were going to book me that said, okay, listen, we can't do anything in person. We'll just pay you what we were going to pay you. Just jump on the Zoom and we'll do it. And some of those worked out. I did make a couple of those happen. But the one thing I was more focused on was that TV series, because that deal was my home run deal. Like, that was the deal that was gonna.
Yeah, that was huge.
It was huge.
And you had contracts signed. Like,
we had contracts signed, but they were all contingent on creation. TV's
so you hadn't written the episodes?
Oh, I had written a bulk of them, but we had to produce them. We had to take the money and we had to produce, and then it's all contingent upon the creation of the show, and then of course.
There's no way to film.
There's
it.
all and in TV they have buyouts. They have ways of getting out of making stuff if they want to. And so what happened was we kicked the can to as far as we could down the line of time. We pushed the pilot from March to June, and then June to July, and July to August, and August. It was like constantly. And so they finally were like, okay, we'll do it in September. And that was, I remember I'm filming in Austin, Texas, for this new show.
Oh shit, yeah.
And Texas at that time was going crazy with COVID.
Yep.
And so the network said to me, and this is how I'll end this story for you, is when I filmed Houdini's Last Secrets in 2019, the first episode we did was the episode of the water torture cell. And so they made a water torture cell for me, and they spent a lot of money making it, like $15,000. I asked, I watched it be made, because they had to make it to my specs, my height and weight and stuff. So when we were done filming that episode in 2019, I asked, I said, well, what are you going to do with this water torture cell, this beautiful water torture cell that you just created? And they were like, nothing. We're going to throw it away, essentially. They don't care. They're just on to the next episode. And I said, well, I'll take it because I want it. It's like, it's part of my career now. I just did this on international television. I'll keep that for sure. Like, I'll take that back to Pittsburgh. And now, if you know anything about a water torture cell, it's a giant glass box, made out of metal and, in glass. And it looks like essentially it looks like a phone booth, and that you get into upside down, and they fill it up with water, and you have to get out of it. And so I asked them, I said, listen, since you'll keep it for me, will you put it into a warehouse, or can you hold it for me until I can make arrangements to get it back to Pittsburgh? Because it's a freaking gigantic illusion that is like a couple thousand pounds.
Right.
And so they said, yeah, we have a warehouse we can throw it in. So I threw it in that warehouse, right? And I just decided, like, I'll get it eventually. Well, it sat there until 2020. Until whenever we were getting ready to film this show in Austin, Texas. That's where it was, because I'm doing it with the same production company that filmed Houdini's Last Secrets. So we're getting ready to shoot this new series. We're going to film the pilot. We're now in September, and they say to me, Lee, we're not going to fly you down to Texas because we don't want you to get COVID on the plane. Even though I had already said I had it, they just weren't taking any chances because they were putting up all the money. Yeah. So they said, Lee, we need you to drive to Texas. Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm literally the star of the show.
Private, man.
I wish,
what are you
man. Yeah.
About?
I said it's my series, and and I, it's like, so. Anyways, I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll drive to Texas because they wanted me to quarantine, and of course I had to drive from Pittsburgh to Texas. Yeah. But I made one request. I said, listen, if you're making me drive to Texas, you're giving me a pickup truck. Okay. And they were like, why do you want a pickup truck, Lee? I said, here's why. Because in 2019, when I filmed Houdini's Last Secrets, they made me a water torture cell. Yeah. They put that water torture cell in a warehouse for me. Well, when I'm done filming this with you guys, I'm driving to that warehouse. They're loading that onto my pickup truck. Yeah. And I'm driving it back to Pittsburgh. That's awesome. And that's what I did. So I now have my water torture cell from the TV series. It's in my house.
What kind of storage situation are you doing with? You have a house somewhere in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have a home in Pittsburgh.
Some storage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have that in my basement right now.
No, like storage unit with.
I have a storage unit. No, I have a storage unit that's filled with illusions. But in my house is kind of like a museum. But I also have a water torture cell that at one point was in my garage. It's now in my basement. But
That's where you bathe.
That's where I bathe. Yeah, that's where I keep my fish, my aquarium, and I do plan to turn it into a real aquarium when I'm done with it.
Oh, cool.
I'm gonna have a water torture cell aquarium in my basement. But before I do that, I want to take to Pittsburgh another public stunt of a water torture cell escape.
Ooh.
So I've talked about it already. I've told people about it. It's out there, and it's just a matter of timing. That's what it comes down to. So this should have already happened, but because it hasn't and has had many things get in my way, right now it is technically on the docket for next year.
It's exciting.
So next summer.
What exactly are you going to do?
So the idea that I have currently pitched would be to do it as a public stunt in downtown Pittsburgh in Market Square at night. So we'll see.
And like they'll fill it up. You're going to be handcuffed or tied? Or...
Yes, I'll be handcuffed. I'll be suspended upside down. I'll be dropped in it. I'm going to do a very authentic version to what Harry did, because he did it in Pittsburgh. I won't be doing any date matching like I did before. There won't be any date similarities. And with this one, it will just be the fact that I'm doing his stunt again. But I am changing it. I have my own little tweaks on it. I want to do it outside because I think it just would look really cool at night outside in downtown Pittsburgh. So once that comes, like I said, it's not like I'm announcing it right now. I'm not announcing it. I don't have a firm date on it yet. It's just something that I have been having to kick further down the line. So that is where I'm headed next. So that's the next thing on the agenda of bringing another Houdini 100 type stunt to Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
and continue doing my theater shows. So with the hotel and Liberty Magic.
Are you not terrified to get dropped into water upside down?
No,
because you've done it many times.
I do a lot of wild stuff. I mean, I've done the bullet catch on television. That was where they fired a gun at me and I caught the bullet in my mouth. I've been buried alive. I've done the water torture cell. I've done the upside down straitjacket escape at 100 feet. Yeah, I do some wild shit. So no, the fear element of that is not in my head. I don't have it. I don't have that gene. I don't get scared. I just do it. It's just part of what I do. I love it, actually. It thrills me. I'm kind of one of those nutty people that like to do wild shit.
Do you do other like thrill seeking?
I have.
Stuff?
I've jumped out of planes and I've done some hype. I'm not going up any giant mountains anytime soon. But I do appreciate it though. But I like the danger aspect of magic. That's why I keep it more to the magic element. Like I'm not like in the wingsuits and doing that type of or jumping off bridges and shit like that. Even though if I had the opportunity to do it, I would do it. I always, when people want to, like, I'm the worst person to ask to go jump out of an airplane because I'm the guy that says, yeah. I'm like, yeah, let's go right now. Like, I'm in. Like
maybe one part of waiting to have a family is that element of
I have to get that out of my system. Yeah, I got to get the recklessness. And my recklessness has dissipated over time. Like I've gotten more calculated in my choices. But yeah, when you tell your parents like that you're going to be strung up from a crane hook 100 feet in a straitjacket, they kind of think you're out of your mind. And even all the my girlfriends have all thought that. Like they all think I'm the girls I've dated, they all thought I was a little nuts. But I don't know. It's just part of that element of the Harry Houdini-ish magic that's inside me. That's what I love doing. I love thrilling people. So and that was what I plan to do. So that's what I'm going to continue to do for at least until I'm 52, and then I'm going to pack it in.
Yeah, yeah. But it would maybe move that needle of what type of tolerance you would have to do.
If I had kids, I wouldn't be doing it. I probably would be rethinking because wanting to be there for them and not take those types of chances. But at the moment, I have no kids.
What was the the time you came closest to
injury?
I've had a ending it, or
I've had a couple times. One, I had a really bad car accident that I walked away from. That one was a little scary. But I'm around from a car accident because of me doing these crazy things. I knew how to brace for the impact. I knew how to remain calm. I knew not to freak out like of what was happening around me with everything, all the car getting exploding and the airbags going off and me understand, it was, so I've had that happen, but that's not magic. I've been in situations where when you're working with guns, there's always a chance of something going wrong.
Yeah, Alec Baldwin knows that.
Yeah, Alec Baldwin, and it's funny is that the guy that has now been all over television, kind of like talking about that Alec Baldwin thing, is a gentleman by the name of Steve Wolf. He was the one of the other people on my show. And it's so so when he's talking about when he's been on like CNN and MSNBC and he's being interviewed about the Alec Baldwin stuff because he's an expert in guns and in
Armorer.
He's an armorer, yeah. And he was the armorer on my show. And we did the bullet catch, so he knows what it's like to work with live bullets on an actual set. And I can tell you this story about when we filmed that on for television. Like I said, he has now become kind of like the go-to guy for that story, the Alec Baldwin story. Unfortunately, he's become that guy, and he didn't intend that to happen, but he has the knowledge because of working on the magic show with me.
I can't believe he got off for that. It seems insane to me. The idea that a firearm will discharge without someone pulling the trigger doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, there are prop guns. There, like in that whole world, there are various guns that are used for shows. So there are guns that act certain ways. Not necessarily. Like I said, at the end of the day, when you're on a set, like when I was on set and the guns were introduced, we all had to go through a training. We all had to. It was made very, very known that there was no fucking around. Like these, when you and even this was not even for the cameras either. This wasn't just to make the show better and make it seem more serious. This was when the cameras were not rolling. They were literally talking to us. Like Steve Wolf was very much open. He said, I don't want anybody to die. We don't want no accidents to happen. He goes, so this is how things are going to be done, and we followed it precisely. Yeah. Now, when you're dealing with someone standing down range, holding a gun, aiming it at you, knowing that there's a bullet in there, knowing that it's going to whiz at you, that's a different type of feeling, though. And when we were filming it on the show, the day I woke up to have to do that trick, I actually woke up to the news of what was happening in Pittsburgh at Tree of Life.
Oh, holy shit.
So the day I was supposed to film the bullet catch in Austin, Texas, was the same day as the shooting at Tree of Life in Pittsburgh. So I now have to go play with a gun and do a silly magic trick with a firearm when there was real things happening in my hometown, literally in a location where I have been. Like that synagogue is 1 mile from my house. Like, so I was very messed up that day because all I was thinking about was the city of Pittsburgh, the Jewish community, Squirrel Hill, why this is happening. And then I have to go play with a gun and let someone pull the trigger and shoot one at me.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, I had an amazing director for my show. And he's the same director. His name is David Barsky. He's the same director that directed all the episodes of Dirty Jobs. So if you like Dirty Jobs, you like his work, go watch my series. You'll like our series too.
I'm looking forward to it.
He saw that I was rattled that day and that I was not in character. I wasn't myself. I wasn't in the frame of mind to be doing a deadly magic trick because 13 magicians have died doing that trick. So it has a history of death. And luckily for me, my director saw that I was extremely bothered by what was happening in Pittsburgh, and he decided to say, he said to me, he says, Lee, he goes, we're not filming today because I don't like how the sun looks, and he blamed it on the.
Nice.
He said, go back
lighting.
to. Yeah. He goes, go back to your trailer. You're cut for the day. We're not shooting this today. We're going to do it at a later date. So I got off the hook that day, and so I got to go back and think about it and call home and see what the hell was going on, and that was because he was cognizant that what was going on in Pittsburgh was obviously affecting
really
me.
Cool. Yeah.
So he did.
What a great guy!
What a really great guy. So we then ended up filming it at a later date, and everything worked out great. But at the same time, it just made it compounded it. It complicated it a little bit. But at the same time, like it's just one of the scary things when you're playing with guns and you're doing these dangerous things. There are real consequences when you're doing these things, and obviously Alec Baldwin now knows that. He'll never pick up a gun the same way ever again.
Yeah,
he won't because it changed his life. And that's when you don't have respect for it. That's when it does change your life, and that's why. And I'm a gun owner, and I'm pro gun. But when you don't respect it, when you don't respect it with something that intense, you have intense things that happen as a result. And unfortunately, that's what Alec had to go through. But he's not 100% to blame in it, though.
Yeah,
There are
like maybe it
multiple
was
there were
half cocked or something.
well, there were multiple levels of fuck ups that happened that day.
Yeah. When you do so in medicine, we always do these retroactive analyses whenever something goes wrong,
Hmm.
where you look at all the different levels of failure and try to figure out. It's this root cause analysis is what we call it, and you try to figure out where things went wrong. A lot of the best literature about this is for plane crashes,
Okay, yeah, right.
and there's actually been people in medicine, doctors, who have tried to take what the pilots and what the air and aviation industry does and apply it to medicine.
Oh, okay, that makes
And
sense.
it's really, I
Yeah,
think, helped me a lot and helped a lot of people try to process these kind of never events. When
right.
a patient dies that shouldn't have died,
Hmm.
because just like your example of Harry Houdini, they didn't get fluids early enough, they didn't get antibiotics early enough. What can you do to make sure that never happens again?
Right.
Well, we'll develop what's called an order set.
Hmm.
So if the patient comes in with sepsis, you press one button
Hmm.
and they get their antibiotics and their IV fluids ordered. Well, that's not good enough. What if the patient comes in and now it's automatically triggered so that you can't get to the next step unless you click a box that says, do I want this patient to get the sepsis order set or
Okay,
not?
right, right.
And so you're eliminating all the possibilities for failure.
For failure, right?
Just
Well,
like,
that didn't happen that day. That
yeah,
was, and to be honest with you, it has happened throughout history. I mean, there's other cases of it. I mean, Brandon Lee. I mean, he
sure,
died.
the
He
crow.
died making the
Yeah,
crow.
the
I mean,
crow.
there
Yeah.
was
But
someone.
was that also
Those were
pure
squib.
accident?
Those were squibs. So I can tell you exactly a story about a magician named Chung-Ling Soo, who is a Chinese magician who would do the bullet catch. And Chung-Ling Soo, when he did the bullet catch, actually, it's funny though. He was a Chinese magician, but he was actually playing a Chinese magician. It was actually a guy named William Robinson,
Okay.
who was an American who was playing a character of Chung-Ling Soo, and he did the bullet catch on stage, and back then a piece of a bullet was lodged into one of the chambers, and whenever the person was getting ready to fire, they pulled the trigger, and it malfunctioned, and a part of the bullet, a
Yeah.
part of shrapnel essentially of a
Yeah.
bullet that was logged in the gun shot and killed Chung-Ling Soo on stage, and the audience didn't know that it was um
If there was no primer behind it, how could it have been ejected forcefully enough in order to hurt him?
so over all of the times he had used it, there still
Primer
was
had built up, or
there
gunpowder
had been
built up.
gunpowder built up over the residue. Yeah. And it was just one of those freak events that took a magician's life doing a trick on stage like that.
Wow.
And it's like, when you play with these dangerous things can happen, accidents can happen.
Right. And that's why
yeah.
we have like the basic rules of gun ownership
Right, keep
and
it-
gun
yeah,
safety.
right.
You don't point it at anything you don't want it. You don't
Now,
want to destroy.
for
basically.
Alec though, like there were all these checks and balances that didn't happen, and that's what. Now remember, he's the final person to get handed this gun,
Yep.
and he's the one that's supposed to aim it at a camera and flick it or whatever they wanted him to do with it.
Yeah.
Because in his mind, he's acting. He's not thinking that this is
Totally.
real. This is real reality. He's not in a real Western. This isn't bad guys coming after him. He's playing pretend. So when you're playing pretend with a pretend item.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Somebody said safe or something.
Someone
like
said it was.
Told him it was
said it
unloaded.
was and at the end of the day, there shouldn't have been actual bullets on that set to begin with. But that's a check and balance error that had happened where they did bring bullets on that set, because what were they doing? They were playing target practice in the back. They were trying to shoot bottles and
Holy
yeah.
shit. So is someone going to go down for that? Like the
the
armor
the
or
armor
whatever?
is going to
They're
likely I forget her name, but she's likely going to be in a lot of trouble. Yeah, I think that's going on now. That has it has taken time to get to this point, but I wouldn't be surprised if Steve Wolf is probably one of the experts they call on that case. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah.
The Tree of Life Day for me was also pretty shitty because my family was actually living here at the time, and although it's not my dad's shul, it could have been that day. You know,
Right.
he hops around, so
Sure.
I didn't
Right.
know when I got the news if he was safe or not. They were living in Squirrel Hill, you know, and usually he would go to like the Orthodox
Okay.
spots. He's kind of like he's not Lubavitch, but he kind of hangs out with those guys. He's
Okay.
you know, the hats and long coat
Okay.
types.
Yeah. Would that be considered Hasidics?
Yeah, he likes
Okay.
the Hasids.
Okay.
He although there's like some like Lubavitch, I don't think all the Lubavitch Jews are Hasidim.
Okay.
So I could be wrong about that, but it could be
Because I know
it's all under Orthodox.
So I know we have a pretty big
Hasidic community here.
In Pittsburgh. Because I remember always growing up and seeing that community in Pittsburgh, and then I was in New York, and then I would see that community in New York,
And
over Brooklyn and in Queens, and
well, I lived in Crown Heights for 2 years.
Okay, so you were right near that then, yeah.
Yeah, and I lived on the black side. So the Jewish side of there's a Jewish side and a black side of Crown Heights, which is on what's the name of the street? Crown Heights Boulevard or whatever.
You were near the Houdini's gravesite, because that's kind of
It's in Brooklyn.
It's near Brooklyn. It's
over
near
in Queens. Yeah, you said it's in
Queens,
but
up
yeah.
It's right on it's actually near the expressway.
Uh-huh.
So how it gets cut in half by the expressway, and it's on the other half of the expressway into Queens.
Yeah, I'll check it out next time.
Yeah,
so
look it up.
Yeah, so you were. Are we done talking about times that you almost died doing
Yeah,
magic?
we can talk about something more cheerful than the crazier times.
So the bullet catch was a big one.
Yeah, bullet catch was a wild one, though.
Yeah, I guess there was like a David Blaine mishap with a bullet catch. Also, he
I do
lost
know
part
all
of his
about
tooth
that.
or something.
So that one had to do about the. So he had a mold made for his teeth. Okay, and it was and how he would do the bullet catch, he would put a cup in his mouth, and he would have this mold. I guess it would. What would that be? A
prosthetic?
Not a prosthetic.
Denture?
Not a denture. It was just something you would wear in, like, you know, what would hockey players wear?
Oh, mouth guard.
Just like a mouth guard. Yeah, it was like a custom made double mouth guard. So, but it was a custom. So it was his top and his bottoms, and it was hinged at the back. So it actually, it would look like this around his teeth.
Yeah,
and it hinged like this. So essentially, it was closed at the back, so nothing could go down his throat.
Yeah.
Right? So when he put that in, he wasn't like he was putting food in his mouth anyways, but it was meant to hold the steel cup that was in his mouth. And the idea behind this version, like I said, David does stuff his own unique way. His version was he wanted to see a real bullet from a high-speed camera aimed at his face. He wanted to see the bullet going into the cup that was in his mouth, the steel cup, and then mushrooming, hitting it, and then ballooning, and then fragments coming out of it. Now, of course, he's not keeping the bullet in his mouth like the other versions. He's essentially letting you see it enter and then exit, okay? And with a high-speed camera. So what is he having? He's having somebody firing a .22 downrange with a laser scope at him. Now I know the guy that pulled the trigger, that did it the first time on television. And after it, he told David, and he said that he did not want to ever have to do that again, because he did not want to be responsible if it ever did go wrong. He didn't want to kill his friend. Okay? So David, now the one guy in David's world that David trusts the most, just told him he'll never do it again for him, right? So what did David do? David's crazy.
He found somebody else to do it.
No, he found his own way to do it himself.
He put a timer on the trigger.
He pulls the trigger himself. You want to know how he pulls it? You want to know how he does it? It's crazy,
Kurt Cobain style.
Oh, no,
man. With the toe.
No, man, this is
totally, toe the shotty.
This is insane what he does. So he stands downrange. He puts in the mouth guard.
I shouldn't be laughing.
He puts in the cup. Okay. The gun is loaded. Okay, it has a real bullet in it. He has a string tied to the trigger. He
used fishing line.
That he runs it all the way down. You can see it's a white piece of
pulley. You just put a string and a little pulley.
No, he just ties a string around it on the thing. and he runs it all the way downrange, and he has it tied to his finger.
Yeah.
Meaning that when he does this, he pulls the trigger.
Yeah.
Okay. So now here's what he does. So he's loaded up. Now he has there's a laser sight on it that's dialed in.
Yeah.
He stands downrange in front of the laser with the string. He takes out his iPhone.
No.
And he puts it in selfie mode.
Come on.
And
to
he
make sure that the laser dot is
He
there.
gets the laser lined up with the inside of the cup. And then whenever he's ready, he pulls the trigger and he takes one to the face. Because that's how fast it happens. As soon as he pulls it, that bullet's hitting him in that cup and it's bouncing out. Right? Now they're getting it on high-speed camera because it's totally nuts that you're pulling a trigger.
So there's no trick. The whole thing is just being insane.
The trick is just being nuts to pull that trigger. Well, he screwed it up once. Yeah, he did. He messed up. He almost died. He came this close to dying. And he's actually just done 2 more stunts in his Vegas show. He's now, I'll even plug David Blaine. Go see him at, he's at Resorts World in Las Vegas. But he's only doing 2 shows a month. And the reason why is because his show is so intense in terms of like the physicality shit that he's doing. It's so dangerous that he can't do the show more than a few times a month. But the reason why he screwed it up that time was on his 3rd performance of it. So he does the one time where the guy pulls the trigger. He does the second time where he does it and he does it clean. The bullet fires, goes into the cup, it shoots out, everything's great. The 3rd time, he was in Buffalo, New York. He was doing a big performance up there at a college, and he was doing the bullet catch, and the mouth guard that he used for the other 2 performances, he was using the same mouth guard. He doesn't have a backup though. Well, as he was putting the mouth guard in his mouth, the hinge on the back of it splits. So now it's just 2 separate mouth guards. There's no thing connecting it, right? Well, that was a big component of how this trick actually helped.
Yeah.
That was because whenever he put the cup in his mouth, that little hinge in the back kept that cup from going
taking out his throat.
From taking out his throat. So whenever he pulled the trigger, now he did feel the rip of the mouth guard in his mouth. He knew that it ripped.
But he just went for it anyway.
He should have stopped. He should not have done it. But how do you see? This is the problem with us magicians. We're on stage. We're set up to do this big dangerous thing, and one little thing goes wrong, and he still did it. When in actuality, that one little thing that went wrong, it should have stopped everything.
Yeah.
But we don't want to let the audience down, right? You know. So he did it anyways. Now here's what he has said about it. When he pulled that trigger and he had it lined up with the cup, it went into the cup, but it pushed the cup into the back of his throat.
Yeah.
And he thought that at that moment he had died. He said that he was hovering above his body and he saw himself die on stage. And then all of a sudden he went back into his body and he came back out of it and he realized he had lived. And then from that day forward, he has not done, to my knowledge, he has not done it since.
Wow.
And I don't know if he'll do it again, but he has had 2 other mishaps in Vegas just recently. He does the spike illusion where you slam your hand down on cups and there's a spike under one of the cups. And the goal is to not put your hand over the cup that has the spike. Well, he went down on the spike and he put a spike through his hand by accident. So that has happened. And then the second thing that he had happened, and this is why I think David Blaine is the craziest dude in the biz. He does a thing where he does a box jump where he goes 90 feet into the air and he falls off the platform and he lands on a bunch of boxes.
Yeah. This was the one he did in Bryant Park in New York City.
In Bryant Park, yeah.
Where he was on this tiny little platform.
He stood up there.
And then he did it for 7 days or something.
He was up there. I think he was up there for
72 hours.
He was up there for 3 days or something.
Yep.
So he does that in his live show in Vegas. He has all the people clear out of a certain area. He goes up on this beam, and they fill it up with boxes. And then he literally does a fall, and he falls in the boxes, right?
Yeah.
Well, he's done it a bunch of times. Well, just recently he did it. He fell through the boxes. And when they went to remove all the boxes to get him out, he had dislocated his shoulder.
Yeah.
So he popped his shoulder, and he was in all kind of pain. He went up on stage and in front of the entire audience, he said, "Is there a doctor in the house?"
Oh, Jesus.
And a whole bunch of hands went up, and he said, "Come up on stage.
Reduce my
I need
shoulder."
your help." And they had to pop him back in on stage. So they popped back in his shoulder.
I saw a good one of those at a MMA fight too, where a guy
Oh,
pops his shit back in and
dude.
starts wrecking again.
Right. Well, this one, David was literally like biting on a towel for them to pop because they couldn't. They tried multiple times, but finally they got it back in.
Yeah.
And he finished the show because he's a nut.
Do you think it's possible that any of it's staged, like the hand thing or anything like that, like to generate hype? No. This is all just.
No, it's not. It's not staged.
It's all completely.
It's organic.
Legitimately,
it's real. It's just
doing
mistakes.
crazy shit.
It's just when you do crazy shit,
You're gonna end up
with crazy shit can go wrong, and when it does, it will make headlines. Like I said, David doesn't want to injure himself. He doesn't want a dislocated shoulder. He doesn't want a spike through his hand, even though he does put a spike through his hand on purpose. He does it for real. He does a spike through his hand. He really does do it. But this was not that. This was not what he was doing.
Yeah. I watched him sew his mouth shut.
He does the sewing his mouth shut.
Was really messed up, and then the
spouting,
the water
spouting. Yeah,
I'm like a Jimmy. Is that all Jimmy Fallon or?
He'd done it on Fallon.
Yeah.
He'd done that. He does the human aquarium where he produces the frogs.
Have you done any of those type of shows? The night, like I don't know what they're called.
The late night shows.
Yeah, late night.
I have not done a late night. I've been asked, believe it or not, I've been asked to do a couple. It just didn't work out. Timing, this, that, the other thing. I was trying to get on the one show. I was trying to get on
Letterman.
Not well, yeah.
That'd be cool.
I almost was on Letterman. I was supposed to be on Letterman actually.
Yeah,
it just didn't work out.
He's kind of the goat to me. I feel like. I mean, there's a lot of amazing people who've done it, but to me, like Letterman, I guess because of how old I am, maybe it was like he's the kind of pinnacle.
Yeah, Letterman was one I almost cracked. I'd been on the stage. I'd been in the Ed Sullivan Theater. I've sat at David Letterman's desk, and I had an interview with the actual booker for the Letterman show, and he wanted to book me. And he said, "Well, you're going to be on the next run of when we do Magic Week." Because they did one Magic Week where they had 5 magicians on each night of the week. Because they would do like Ventriloquist Week, they would do stand-up comedy week. They did a Magic Week.
Yeah,
they had 5 magicians on, and they had like they had the big names. They had I think it was like Penn and Teller. There was some big names on there. And so when I went and met with him, he said, "Listen, we love this young brand of magic that you have. Like we got to get 4 more of you guys, and we're going to do another Magic Week, and you're going to be one of the guys." And I was like, "Let's do it. Game on." And then David announced he was retiring.
Yeah,
and
he's like, "I'm growing a beard."
Yeah, and I'm going to grow a beard, and I'm going to call it a day. So if he would have gone another year, I'd have been on the show. But he didn't go another year, so I wasn't on the show. I've had a couple other opportunities that just didn't work out. One of them was with Seth
Rogen?
Not Seth Rogen.
Seth Meyers.
Seth Meyers, yeah, because he's a big Pittsburgh fan. So
nice.
we were trying to line it up to be on the show when I had my series Houdini's Last Secrets come out. It just didn't work out. And there's been other little instances, but I had in my own little brush with those types of shows. I created a segment for PTL, Pittsburgh Today Live.
Yeah, Daisy and crew. Love those guys.
Yeah, so I was doing this like 8 or 9 years ago.
Okay.
I had a thing called Monday Magic, so I would go on and do a live Monday morning performance, and I had to do it once a month, and I did it for like 4 years straight. I was once a month. I was on Pittsburgh Today Live.
Cool.
And and so over time that like ballooned into me always being on that show. So I always felt like I had my own little hometown version of a late night set.
Of course. Yeah. What about Penn and Teller? I mean, I guess they had a show where they brought magicians on too for a while, right?
Yeah, I was cast on that show. I've had to back out multiple times. The one time was. I talked a lot about Paul Gertner before. So one of his tricks he created, I actually do. And whenever Penn and Teller were casting their second season of that show, they hit me up because it was their first year in America. So it was the first year they were shooting in America. That show originated in the UK. They brought it from the UK to the United States. And so in the first year it was in the United States, I was one of the magicians that was contacted to be on the show. So what did I do? They ask you for your TV pitch. Like, what are all your tricks that you could do for television? Well, at that same time, I was actually cast on America's Got Talent. I was on America's Got Talent that year. So I had a whole I had a whole, kit and caboodle of magic tricks that I had been pitching for television.
Right.
And one of them was a trick that Paul Gertner, my mentor, had created. So Penn and Teller sees my pitch kit for TV, and the one trick that they wanted me to do was the trick that Paul created. So I then had to take that information back to Paul and say, "Hey, Paul, they want to book me, but the problem is they want your trick."
Right.
And I could tell just by talking to him that I didn't know this, but he had also pitched to be on the show. Now, this was just completely like unbeknownst to me. I didn't know, he didn't know. It was one of those things. And now here was where the problem lies. They wanted me to do the trick. They didn't want him to do the trick. And the reason why is because I'm the young
Yeah.
hip,
You're the face.
I'm the young hip guy.
You're the
and,
face.
And he's unfortunately the older magician.
Sure.
And what are they trying to sell? They're trying to sell ratings. What gets better ratings? In their mind, it's the young guy. So when they came back to me, now at the same time, like I said, I was doing America's Got Talent. So I didn't care that I had to back out. I just was like, well, I could do a different trick, but they were very specific. They wanted that trick. They fell in love with it, and they wanted me to do it. So I literally had to force their hand. I had to call them up and say, "Listen,
take this guy. I can't do it."
I said I won't do the trick.
Take Gartner.
I won't do it. Paul will do the trick.
You actually told Penn and Teller, or you?
I told
guess one of them talks. The other one doesn't.
Well, they both talk, but I told the producers that are the ones that are
had their ear
that are making those final decisions.
Yeah.
And so I had to literally back out and say no. And so Paul has done the show 3 times. He's fooled them twice.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
In a weird way, I feel like I have also fooled Penn and Teller, because when me and Paul were talking about this, when the decision was finally made that I wasn't doing it and he was, well, what did I do? I helped Paul.
Helped him clean it up.
I helped
and
him
get it ready for
get
TV.
him ready,
That's
and,
cool.
and of course he was excited, and so he then went on and he fooled Penn and Teller. So I felt like I was a part of that in a weird way.
So cool.
But since then, they have offered for me to be on the show since. I'm gonna be honest with you, man. Timing is everything. And at the time when they wanted me to do it, I was filming Houdini's Last Secrets. The other time they wanted me to do it, I was preparing for Houdini 100, and it was like, and then the pandemic happened. And then, it was like, now that they're still filming. And so I could have gone on one of these current seasons. I just have had so many other projects pop up that I just didn't care about being on Full Us and fooling P&T. But if the show continues, I mean, there's always a chance that I'll go back and I'll do it again. But like I said, I'm still holding out for this other Discovery Channel potentially.
Oh, cool!
Thing.
The one that got canceled by
the one
COVID
that got canceled
could still happen.
Could still happen. Yeah.
Oh, cool!
So it's still in the possibility.
Since he did the trick, can you describe it at all?
I could do it for you if you'd like to see it. You want to see it?
Yeah,
I'll do it for you, man. I have it with me.
Can we swap sides? I feel like the magic's going to look better on this lens.
Yeah. I can do it on it.
Do you have anything that you've come up with that you put on like a similar level?
Oh yeah,
of
I've
difficulty.
I have a few that I. But you know what? The one thing I don't do is I don't put my magic into like books for other magicians to learn from.
Yeah.
I kind of hold on to my stuff. Whereas some magicians, they find that putting their magic into those books and lectures, they then sell it to the magic world.
Yeah.
So magicians are then buying their secrets, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was always a performer that cared more about performing for laymen, actually real audiences, where some magicians make their entire livings performing for just magicians. That's all they do, is they create magic for magicians.
Like at this conference that you were talking about.
Like at conferences but that is where some of these tricks that you see on television, that's where they begin. They begin in other people's hands, and they eventually make their way to a David Copperfield or a David Blaine or to a Chris Angel.
Do you have to like compensate the person
yes,
if you take
do.
their trick?
Yeah, yes, you do.
But only if it's published in a book. So you can't necessarily get that level of...
You can't copyright a magic trick. There's very rare instances of where you can copyright magic tricks.
What about a patent on a device that's used for a trick?
Yes, you can. You can patent a device. But it's still, a hard. It's a nichey little world, and it's not 100% at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
Yeah.
So, so like I said, some magicians they do really focus on making magic for magicians and selling magic to magicians and creating.
Like Paul, like your mentor.
Yeah.
I
He's
mean,
very much. He
he
lives
had
in.
multiple books.
He
You
lived in
learned
that
from his
world,
books.
right? Yeah, he lived in that world, so he was creating magic and putting it out to the magician world. Whereas I was creating magic, I just wasn't putting it out to the magician world. I was guarding my secrets. So I like to hold on to my material. That's why I really don't like to put out YouTube videos of me doing my shows because um, at the end of the day, like people are gonna steal from you.
Yeah.
So I just try to make it a little harder for people to steal from me.
At least they don't have like HD close up
Right.
with the steps.
So, but
Yeah.
I do, you do catch people coming to your show and taking notes and stuff like that.
Oh, interesting. So that's also very similar to the DJ world, right? Where you have people behind you
Like sharking.
Shazamming. and
Sharking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
I know what sharking was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
very
that was-
much. You have that all the time. Have comedians that would go. Obviously, there's been all the stories of how comedians would steal each other's bits and stuff like that.
Sure.
Like-
Carlos Mencia.
Carlos Mencia is
Very
a
famous.
very famous version of that. Like I could even give you one where, like, unfortunately, and R.I.P. But Robin Williams was very well known for being
For taking other people's bets.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
He was hated in the comedy world.
That's so interesting because you never hear him when you're listening to comics
Mhm.
talk about the greats. He doesn't really come up that often, but he was hilarious.
He was hilarious.
I mean, unbelievable
And he was one of the greats.
impressions.
He was
And the movie work, like Good Morning Vietnam,
Yeah, I mean,
Birdcage. It's all.
unfortunately, he used some of his power in the comedy world to bully other comedians.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and he would steal, and that was just kind of like, because the old adage was, if you wrote a joke, it's not yours until it's performed on television.
Sure.
That was the old kind of the old comedy adage of rules.
Right,
The rules of comedy. The joke's not yours until it's told on television.
This was back in the day when the only way you could succeed was with TV. But now it's very
was getting on
different, like,
Carson, essentially.
Yeah, you don't like
that was how
that's
you
not
made
the
it.
measure of success anymore.
So, Robin was known for going to the comedy store and sitting in the back and wearing disguises and taking people's acts. And then what he would do is if he did your joke on like a late night show the next day, he'd like give you $100 or something. Like, yeah, it was like some of those like weird stories that you'd hear throughout the years of him being that way. But a lot of comedians did that stuff. He just happened to be a famous comedian that did it. But Carlos Mencia got in a lot of trouble for it with Joe Rogan and like that whole world. And but trust me, there's been many, many more since that have done it. But it happens in the magic world too. People steal, people copy. Like I said, I'm currently experiencing a little bit of that at the moment. But I can't go into too much detail on that. But it happens, man. Unfortunately though, you would hope that the younger generation coming up would understand not to do that shit and to have the ethics that was instilled into my generation of entertainers to do it the right way.
Yeah.
But we live in the TikTok world now where
Sure.
people want the quickest way to the top.
But also, how many tricks can you really invent on your own? You're going to be doing somebody else's material, but you're saying like go to the classics.
Yeah, you are. Yes, you may be doing something that is someone else's and you may not even know it. And
That's what I'm saying.
that happens. But if somebody created it before you and they put it out and they don't want you doing it, well then you got to listen. That'd be like you coming up with a cut or
a routine.
a routine that is it matches someone else. Well, if that guy can go and say, hey, listen, I created this in 2014. That was when I created that cut to that, and I can prove it to you. And then you'd have to go, okay, well, then that's yours. That's kind of the ethics that you're supposed to have in the comedy world as well as the magic world.
If it's not going on YouTube and you're not putting it in a book, how's anyone going to know that it's yours?
That's kind of one of the things that is talked about, but is not 100% like unknown. Like it's not. We don't really know. Like we don't have 100% answers for those. But when my world is so small that if you do something and someone sees it, they're gonna go, "Hey, someone does something similar. You should talk to him." And then, like I said, it might just be a case in point where you developed it on your own, and they might have already created it, and now you're just saying, "Hey, listen, I did develop this on my own. I didn't mean to copy you in any way. Is there a middle ground?" That's what you're always looking for, is the middle ground. Some guys don't want to play the middle ground game. They just want to say that it's theirs and tough shit. When in actuality, you can prove that it isn't. You can point to things in it, and you can say, well, no, that line, I know where that line came from, or that move that you're doing, no. Like, there's ways to dissect stuff and prove where it came from.
Do the autopsy.
Do the autopsy. You can do you can do the autopsy of a magic trick, and you can really discover where the method came from, and or how it was developed. And that's the best way I can describe to you how magicians kind of interact with each other. There's this whole subworld of magicians that sell magic tricks to each other. It's a whole industry.
That's like the conference you're talking about,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, it's a huge little
IBM?
world. Yeah, IBM, and there's
Yeah.
the SAM, and there's, like I said, there's these other things called FISM, which is the Federation International Society of Magic, which is like the Olympics of magic, where magicians compete against each other in all those various little subcategories like mentalism and
Yeah.
comedy magic and illusion, like I was describing.
Have you
So,
gotten into that at all?
into the competition world?
Yeah.
No, I've always been. I never really cared about performing for other magicians. It'd be like you doing DJing for other DJs.
Yeah, like
It-
the
it-
battles or something.
Yeah, it's okay. Like, I'll go and perform at a magic convention. I'll go and hang out at a magic convention. I'm there to learn.
Mm.
I'm not really there to teach. As much as there are guys out there that make their living teaching.
Mm.
I like being kind of a student sometimes too. I don't always want to be telling people how to do their stuff. I'd like to learn and get their expertise as well. And because, that's what's fun about the arts. It's all about creativity. It's all about the sharing, and obviously it's all about the protection of the art. It's about keeping the secret.
Yeah, yeah. Because ultimately, if too much is divulged,
Right.
it's just not
Yeah.
fun anymore,
Right, and
right?
that's- and
like
that's-
once you know how it works, it's not. It's no longer interesting. It's like, I guess the magic is gone.
The magic can be gone, right? And we don't want that to happen. So that's why we are sort of protective on certain secrets, and that's why it's a shame that things do get ruined and they're being put out on TikTok and YouTube, and there's no real way to stop it. And but I will say this: the guys that do that are not well liked in the magic world. They don't have many magician friends because we look at them and we go, you're not a true magician if you're sharing the secrets, if you're telling everybody how it's done, and the trick isn't 100 years old. If it's something new that has just been created by somebody else that I respect, and you're showing how it's done on a YouTube video, you're breaking the rules, man. Like, you're not part of the society anymore. You're now an outsider. Like,
Will they actually get voted out of
Oh
IBM
yeah,
and things?
100%. Yeah, you
yeah.
can be kicked out of the International Brotherhood of Magicians. Many magicians have. They kicked out Valentino, and he was the masked magician.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, he deserved it.
yeah, he deserved it a little bit. So
He was dry snitching or something. So, have you done just comedy shows where you don't do any magic?
no,
Or, like, stand-up?
I do stand-up comedy magic. So I like to create comedy with magic tricks. So I put both of them together. But I write comedy. I write bits. I'll write lines that are just stand-up material. But it's all in crux of a magic show. So it's a comedy magic show. So I just try to make magic funny. I just try to make it more than what it is. But so I've never done a full stand-up set, as in just straight comedy. But though I could
That's
write
what I'm saying.
I could write a comedy set. But I don't want to be a comedian. I want to be a magician comedian.
You're very
Yeah.
you are what you are. You're
Right,
already
right.
part of something.
Although,
There's no
like I
reason to
said,
branch out.
I could go and do a stand-up comedy set, no problem, because
Yeah.
I have the chops to stand on stage and
Yeah.
work a room, and but at the end of the day, like, I've always been a magician first, and I want to be a magician last.
Makes
and,
sense.
and so I don't really want to. I don't want to travel too far from that.
Do you ever get interested in any of the supernatural side of things?
Mm-hmm.
Do you consider yourself to have greater than average powers or any
No.
kind of like extrasensory
Mm.
perception?
I can
or
read your
anything like that?
mind. I can do everything, man. I can read your mind. I can put thoughts into your head. I can do all kind of crazy shit. But I'm using all things that are secrets that were developed by magicians
Yeah.
that use psychological misdirection, physical misdirection. Like I could still watch people's wrists. Could read your, like I said, read your mind. I can do all those things, but I don't have any special gifts. I just have the gift of I will lock myself in a room and learn something, and something that most people would never take the time to learn. That's where I live. I live in the weird. I live in that world. And in that world, you can discover some really intriguing and mystical stuff. But the world of the paranormal, I gotta call bullshit on, because I know how stuff works, and there's nothing that you can't do that I can't prove a way of doing it. There's been instances throughout magic. There's a gentleman, a magician named by the name of James Randi, and he was a big magic exposer of frauds. He kind of picked up where Harry Houdini left off. There's a famous clip of Uri Geller. You know who Uri Geller is?
No, it sounds familiar.
Uri Geller was a mystifier in the 1970s who claimed that he could bend metal with his mind and move stuff with his mind and do all these things. Telekinesis, yes. But Uri Geller was a magician. He was I think he was an Israeli magician. But he didn't build himself as a magician. He built himself as like a prophet or a telekinesis.
Right.
And Yuri went on the Tonight Show one time, and Johnny Carson was a magician, and Johnny Carson called James Randi, and James Randi is the guy that will make sure everything is, because James Randi put out an offer. He said if anybody could do anything of extraordinary ability, he has a $1 million check for anybody that can do something that he can't prove. No one's ever won the $1 million. And there's been many people that have tried. He's been able to debunk everything anybody that's ever tried it. Harry Houdini did the same things. He would write down words on an envelope and say if anybody could, any spiritualist could tell me what was in this envelope, I'd give you $10,000.
Right.
No one ever got it right.
Right.
There was a woman in Pittsburgh to try to do it, and she failed, and she was embarrassed and on stage, and because she couldn't divulge the correct answer. So all those things are a part of it, but back to the James Randi thing, when Yuri was on, Carson had called James Randi, and so that was the time that Uri Geller was on the show, and he went to do the stuff, and he realized that the stuff that he brought was switched out for other stuff. Whoa. And now he said, well, my powers don't work today. So
that's convenient.
That's convenient, right. So that was James Randi making sure everything was on the up and up, and making sure no, trickery was being involved.
Yeah.
But so the telekinesis, the things that go bump in the night, all that stuff, it's all magic.
Is it mentalism?
Magic.
And then that's also something that maybe you don't get into because that's sort of like
I'm really big into mentalism. I do mentalism throughout my show. I do multiple mind reading pieces in my act. I do a book reading where I throw random books into the audience and have you select random words and think of them, and I divulge the words that you're thinking of. I do it with playing cards. I do it with all kinds of stuff. Oh yeah. I use tons of mentalism. Mentalism is just a form of magic, though.
So it doesn't require any paranormal. It's just using psychology. Like
using psychology.
There's a film, and I really wish I could remember which one it was.
Secrets and tactics.
A great movie where they're trying to figure out the location of the safe in the room. He knows that the person will look.
So they're using remote viewing.
He'll look towards what he loves the most or cares about most.
Remote viewing is just another fake thing created by magic. Mm-hmm.
Well, can you describe what it is?
What remote viewing is?
Yeah.
So remote viewing is essentially just like you being able to tell somebody what's happening in a room, like around the world, like through your mind.
Oh, no, I think it's maybe something like what I was thinking of is different. It's literally the person who has the safe divulges the location of the safe by looking at it. And then the person who's looking for the safe knows where the safe is because that's the first thing that the person looked at.
So what you're thinking, what you're tipping on is like a psychology type of aspect of magic. Not 100% on that. That would be something that if a magician was doing something like that, they wouldn't be using a technique like that because you couldn't trust that technique. Although on small occasions, though, you might be able to take, because those are CIA techniques. I've also been a part of I've gone through the FBI Citizens Academy training, so I've learned, what the FBI knows about this type of stuff.
Yeah.
I've learned, and and it's funny, it's like learning what they know. I kind of know more.
Well, yeah, I think we have learned a lot about the incompetence of the 3-letter agencies over the last 3 to 6 years, and long before that. I mean, there's obviously these are just human beings.
They're human beings.
With
I have to speak very
limitations.
highly of the FBI, though. They are very, very good at what they do.
Yeah.
They are the best. So
except for predicting the mass shooters that they've gotten 30 to 40 tips on, like the kid who shot up Parkland.
Well, I mean, you
That
could go
was
back and look at these instances, and
not the best.
There's some ball drops occasionally, but when it comes to what they do, they are the best at what they do in the world. No one comes close.
Versus other secret agents or whatever.
Yeah. Houdini wasn't a secret. Well, there's always been theories that Houdini was one of the first spies.
In the before the CIA, which was Hoover, right?
Well, that was now it was. I believe the FBI was created in 1906.
But before the CIA, yeah.
Yeah, but it was that was it was the FBI. 1906, I believe, is 1906, but that was in the very beginning. Those days, it wasn't what you think of today, and even throughout history of what you think of what what spies are. It's not what you think of because you think of like James Bond, and that's what comes to mind.
I think of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Oh, okay, interesting. That's another interesting one.
Yeah, love that movie.
But the CIA and the FBI and what we have in America are the best at what they do. So, and I've been firsthand in that world, and I've seen it, and to know about it, and to read about it, and to know their techniques, and know that some of those techniques were created by magicians. The FBI wrote a book. I mean, there's a book about how magic influenced the FBI and the CIA. I mean, there's a whole thing about it. And but yeah, magic was a very big part of the creation of how
tradecraft
of how spies work.
Yeah, right.
So my world,
tradecraft.
It's a tradecraft, yeah. And so yeah, my world and that world combined a lot. So to be a part of that world and to be part of this world and to see them both and see how they both intermingled was very interesting to me.
The other show that I really like that shows a lot of the tradecraft is Homeland.
Oh, yeah, right. Great.
Carrie, what's her name? The character's name is Carrie, but the actress is, what is her name?
I know who you're talking about, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, the blonde.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and Brody, because she always said Brody.
Yeah, he's done really well, too, after that show. But yeah, I really like that show, and they show things like using what is it, dead drops, places where you can leave...
Right.
Information for somebody that is going to pick it up. Safe houses, different types of codes, microfilms.
I work with codes. I live in that world of codes. I use codes all the time.
Were you into all that stuff?
Yeah.
Like from the very beginning, when you were a kid, you just wanted to know everything.
Everything.
Tricks.
I want on every.
How does it work?
I want on every rabbit hole you could go
Secret
down,
like languages, making up. We had a couple when we were kids, like Pig Latin, but also double speak, double talk.
But now
there are ways
to code your words. There are a way to code your words in a magic show. Like there are magicians that are amazing at doing word coding, and it's an impressive thing. It's called second sight. And essentially, it's the ability to talk to one another openly and have it sound completely normal, but you are saying various things.
Right, like every third word or every fourth word, things like that.
There's so many variations on it. It could be every third word. It could be the first letter of certain words you were using. It could be the inflection in your voice. There's a lot of variations on it.
Yeah.
And they are used by some of the best magicians in the world. They do have acts that are built around this exact concept.
That's so cool.
I don't want to tip who they are
because
because I'm talking about it, but there are entertainers to this day that still use those codings that are secret. They're not shared. We do keep some of this stuff still very private, but we still can't stop people from like understanding it loosely.
You talked also earlier about the technology and how AR was going to figure into your acts, your idea for that AR
Yeah, right.
showing up at the bus stop with the QR
Right.
code. What about using coding, not code, but actual computer code to perform magic? Like, is there an element?
It's already being done. I know guys that are already using it.
Like artificial intelligence or just programs,
I wouldn't say
algorithms?
AI is definitely being used by magicians. I use it already. I'm using AI. But there are methods to various large and small scale illusions that are out there that are playing on big stages around the world that are using high-end tech. High-end tech.
So the power of integrated circuits and CPUs, really using, and even maybe cloud computing to crunch big data sets in order to generate an answer or something.
Well,
like that
that is being used, and then the element of technology is being used very, very much right now. And one of the godfathers of it is a magician from Pittsburgh, one of the originators. His name was Del Rey, and I've always been a huge fan growing up about Del Rey, and I've written about Del, and I've studied about Del, and I'm working on a little secret project about him right now, but that ain't gonna come out for a while. But he was one of the best magicians at what you're talking about, and he was from Pittsburgh, and he used all these little electronic gizmos that he would create. Like he was like a James Bond, and he was so particular about his props because they were so unique. And they were all one of ones. He didn't have others. He made these things his own. He knew how to make this stuff. I mean, I could literally say he was like the Woz of like magic. He kind of was.
Yeah, Mike Wozniak.
No,
right?
no,
the Apple
designer.
Guy. Yeah.
No,
Is that his name?
Not Mike. It's
Wozniak though.
It's Wozniak. It's Steve Jobs and. Is it Mike Woz?
Michael.
I don't think it's Mike. I don't know if it's Mike. I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Find it out.
I'll have to look that one up. I can't remember. I just know him as Woz.
Yeah. Was Not Was is the great band from Detroit. The great funk band.
The funk band, huh?
Not Was. Was. Yeah, Was Not Was.
But he was
Walk the Dinosaur.
He was very much like that of the magic world. But that was in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. And to the point where he was a magician that wouldn't fly on airplanes. And the reason why is he couldn't put his shit through TSA.
Right.
And he didn't trust TSA because he was worried that if they did get their hands on shit, they would tear it apart and then he would be fucked.
Yeah.
So there's a really amazing story that Paul Gertner would tell about Del Rey because they're both Pittsburgh magicians and they're both like
contemporaneous, like the same exact age.
No, Del was much older.
Working
at
the same time.
So like how I am to Paul would have been to like Del.
Wow.
Like Paul was the
younger
that's your
guy.
Grandpa. He'd be like the
Del
grandpa of magic. Like
Del
would have been into his 90s by now. He died in 2003 at the age of 86, I think. So he would have been maybe into his hundreds now, I guess, if he was still alive. But he would not. So there was a story that Paul told me once where he was in Florida doing a trade show in Orlando, Florida, and Del Rey was at the exact same trade show working for a corporate client. So they're both there. And Paul said to him on the final day of the trade show, he said, "Hey, Del," he goes, "Hey, man, like, big fan, obviously from Pittsburgh. We've known each other for years." He goes, "Hey, when the convention's over at 4:00, would you like to grab dinner?" And Del said, "Paul, I'd love to, but I got to hit the road." And he goes, "Well, why are you in a hurry to get out of here?" He goes, "Well, I have a show tomorrow in Chicago."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Okay, well, when's your flight?" He goes, "Well, I'm driving there right now." He goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, we're in Orlando, Florida.
Yeah.
So, but that's how dedicated Del was. As soon as the show was over, he was in his car
driving
all the way back to Chicago so that he could do a date the next night. And that was because he didn't trust airlines with his stuff. So, because he knew if they screwed it up, it would take him months to rebuild it all and fix it all, and so he just would rather have complete control. So, but Dell was like one of those amazing, amazing magicians that was well ahead of his time.
Do you have any of his stuff, or do you know where it is?
I do, yeah. So throughout the pandemic, like in these little auctions that happen, when the Houdini stuff comes up, that's rare. When the Del Rey stuff comes up, that's even rarer. I'm in there. I'm trying to get it because he's from Pittsburgh, so I'm trying to get some of his stuff back in this city.
You're always going to live here. This
Yeah.
is such a big
This
part
is
of
my
who you
home.
are.
Yeah, it's part of my brand. It's part of my identity. I grew up I was a Pittsburgh kid. I grew up in the city. I was born here. I'll die here. I want to live here. I want to, pass on the next generation of magic from this town. So, and that's what I've been doing since. That's what I've been building.
Have you found anyone who's kind of ready to grab the flag yet?
No, not yet. I mean, there's young magicians all the time, but I would say that there's still a lot of potential to come out of the city with magic. But I'm seeing it. I'm seeing lots of magic start to bloom in this city.
I had no idea there was a scene before you. I just assumed it was just Lee.
Well,
Lee Terbosic
yeah. I
from
mean,
the jump, and you just developed it in a
I've definitely tried
vacuum or something.
to make the scene bigger as much as I could, with the television stuff. But there's been, many guys before me, and there'll be guys after me. So it's just, what are you contributing? That's all it's about.
Do you think that the keys for your success have been that element you were talking about, where you'll just keep learning about something until you figure it out, like the dedication? Is it
I think my keys.
the other thing you mentioned earlier about like not being afraid to put your life at
Well, I'm very
risk?
fearless, but you have to be fearless. I'm fearless in many ways, but I would say to performers, you got to be fearless to not be, be fearless on stage. You got to be willing to take chances and risks, and that comes in every direction. That's just not what the material you're creating, but also the decisions you're making with your career itself. You got to be willing to take risks. When I'm signing on to to get to a level to be asked to be on a TV series, you're giving up massive control. Because now you're letting an editor do what most people don't know how to do, is edit magic. If you're going on America's Got Talent, like I did, you're signing a contract where you're no longer in control of who you are on that show. They are. So that takes guts, and you have to pick and choose your moments to be fearless. But I think for any entertainer, it comes with it's part of it. You got to be willing to make sacrifices, and the dedication that goes into it is, if you're not dedicated, you're gonna get sniffed out fast. So, and I can, I meet magicians all the time that I can tell, how long they've been in it or what this, but I can see where they are in their career. I can see, because I've gone through it, and I have a baseline of all of what it takes to get to those moments.
You can tell if somebody's not all the way in,
Right?
If they're just dipping their toe
if
in.
they're just dipping their toe.
It's not easy to make it in entertainment, in service industry, and a lot of people have to start off by doing it on the weekend,
Right.
and still keeping their job,
Right.
the job
Right.
at Kinko's or
Mhm.
FedEx or
And I know a lot of
UPS
guys.
or
I know
Amazon
a bunch of guys that are weekend magicians. They got the 9 to 5s during the week, and on the weekends they get to have fun. And they look at guys like me and they're like, "Oh, I wish I could do what you did." I go, "Well, it's not that easy. I don't got that regular 9 to 5 check. I don't got that comfy corporate job that's giving me money every 2 weeks. I don't live in that world. I live in the world.
You pay for your own healthcare.
Everything. Yeah.
If something goes on, and
right.
it's all you.
And
your
I
pension, your retirement, you have to figure all that stuff out.
It's all me. Everything is everything.
There's no business. You are the business.
I've learned how to trade. I've learned how to invest. I've learned it all on my own. I learned it through trial and error, but also from asking and being in the room with all the right people too. I put myself in those rooms. I learned very quick. You're a product of the 6 people you keep around you. If you're the smartest person in every room, you're in the wrong freaking rooms. You know what I mean? And so that's why I make sure I'm putting myself in the rooms with the likes of David Copperfield, of David Plains, the biggest players in my game, as well as the biggest players in the other, entertainer games, being in the rooms with Jack Blacks and the Johnny Depps and the Robbie Kriegers, and those are the best. The guys are the best at what they do. So I get to see how they operate. As much as it is as cool as it is to do magic for them, I get to see how they interact with people, and I get to see how they do their business. And so therefore, I can take that back and internalize it and go, okay, well, if what would Jack do? What would what would David do? Or or what would Paul do in this scenario? And I can pull those instances and kind of and have that frame whatever I'm working on. So yeah, it all gets intermingled somehow for sure.
I got backstage at a Jack Black show. It was Tenacious D.
Tenacious D,
and,
yeah.
My dear friend Carlton Goals, his friend's band opened for them.
Oh, that's cool.
I think it was Chicago.
Okay.
And I just, it was just an awesome
Yeah,
show. It was
right.
called like the Pick of Destiny
Pick
tour.
of Destiny tour, yeah.
And they had
remember
this giant rooster.
I remember
on
when they were doing
stage.
that, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I wish I remember the name of the opener band, but the other question I had for you was about your folks and whether they were supportive the whole
Very
time.
supportive, yeah.
And-
I mean, they were great growing up. They saw the passion early. They got me to the library. They got me those books. They took me on those little trips to the magic store when I really needed those moments to get that magic and to buy those, because I would save my my money that I would make doing magic shows at the restaurants, and I would be buying new tricks for the next week. That was how I kept doing it. Just like how you were probably invested in records and
Yeah.
in gear and stuff like that. I was doing the same thing, but I was just buying as many things as or books I could get my hands on to read. The stuff that wasn't in the libraries, the stuff that was put out by the personal magicians. There were only like 100 copies of these books that were hard to get your hands on, that had these very secrets in them about this card trick or this mentalism piece, or how to do this type of mentalism book reading idea. All these things they're out there somewhere, but we just make it very hard for you to find it. That's what we try to do. We try to guard it. But my parents they were amazing. They really helped me out, like in terms of like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I know I scared the shit out of them when I told them I wanted to be a magician for my life, and but I went to college and I got the degree and made mom and dad happy when I got that diploma, and
I'm sure they're super proud now.
They are,
seeing
yeah.
all that you've been able to
cool
accomplish with it,
Yeah,
and all the places you've been able to
see
go.
me on television, and the Houdini 100 thing scared the shit out of them, but at the same time, I told them, I was like, listen, it's gonna be okay. I'm gonna be all right.
Especially mom, I guess.
Yeah, but they were so proud because like I got the day named after me, and
oh wow,
yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Is that permanent, or is that just one day?
It was one day. 2016, November 6th was Lee.
Will always be Lee Terbosic
Day in the city of Pittsburgh
from now on.
So, yeah,
till the end of time.
Forever. So I got my own day.
Is there like a plaque or anything?
They gave me the
photo.
yeah,
one of the photos. The photos from that day are so cool.
Thanks, man.
I've been just stocking them up on my phone to post. Obviously, there's just so much to post for this episode. It's gonna be killer.
Thanks, man.
But but I mean, not just the clips. You got the tricks. We've got but then the photos from that event just turned out so good. Thanks. Like somebody was doing wide angle photography with.
So I brought in Jared Wickerham, who's a really well-known sports and he's a journalism photographer.
Yeah.
And I knew that the Houdini 100 photo, being that it was a historical photo and it had to do with a newspaper, I wanted somebody of the caliber to take a photo that would replicate.
Oh, did you try to get the actual replica photo 100 years and then you posted them like together with
side by side? Yeah. That photo and that stunt is how Discovery Channel found me. That's how that world started, opened it up for me.
The story is just so good. I mean, there's nothing that is more compelling than someone who has a story, somebody who thinks of something that's worth pursuing and then just goes.
And that was it, man. I wanted to tell a story. I wanted to scare the shit out of Pittsburgh, and I wanted to tell a story of Houdini 100, of Houdini's performance from 1916, and how 100 years later, even today, someone could take it up and even take it to a higher. I did it bigger than Harry in a way. He only did it at about 40 feet. I took it up to 100 feet. So, but that's just me trying to make it a spectacle.
Other than the historical element, is it you're helping people relax, helping people that work hard?
It's an escape. It's
get away from their hard lives.
Yeah, it's an escape from reality. And when you can incorporate escape from reality, and you can also put a really cool message behind it. So therefore you can inspire people. That's really what it's about. I've had so many magicians come up to me and say, man, like that inspired me to get back into magic or to pick up that magic book or to do this, or read that Houdini thing. And so that's kind of cool. And what I hope that happens is I hope a long time from now, I guess it would be 93 years. I hope 93 years from here, I'll be gone, but I hope another Pittsburgh magician does Houdini 100 and replicates mine and Harry's performance. That'd be super cool to me.
Wow.
For it to live on.
Can you
again.
imagine what the city will look like?
Who knows? Everything will be probably be levitating by then. So who knows if an upside down straitjacket escape at 100 feet would even be that impressive to people 93 years from now? Who knows?
Is it flexibility or what, or just daring, or what?
There's
what
a
do you
lot
have
of things
to
that go into it. There's flexibility. There's muscles. There's understanding how the jacket works and perfecting how to get out of it. I mean, that's a huge element of it. It's breath. I had to be in an inversion table for 6 months before I did that stunt because I had to regulate the blood in my body so that I didn't black out while I was hanging upside down 100 feet up above the city of Pittsburgh over everybody, because that would have looked really bad.
How long did you have to be upside down for the
So
stunt?
I had planned to be upside down for, I estimated that it would take anywhere from, from like 14 to like 20 minutes total. That day I was upside down for about 12. The whole stunt was done in the books in 12 minutes. So I didn't hit that 14 or 20 minutes. So when I was training, when I was getting in the inversion table and hanging upside down, the first time I did it, I did it for maybe about a minute. I was upside down, hung upside down for a minute in the inversion table. And the next, I had a headache for 2 days. So I was like, oh shit, this is going to be way harder than I thought. So then I had to schedule it. So I had to plot it. I said, okay, so every couple days I'll add 15 seconds or I'll add 30 seconds.
So you don't do handstands? You don't have an inversion practice?
I do. Yeah. I have an inversion table.
Well, forget the inversion table. I mean, like, I do handstands as part of my yoga practice.
Well,
I'm used to getting upside down.
I just liked the inversion table because it was just quick, fast, and dirty.
Yeah,
It made it so that I could do text messages. Like I was hanging there like a bat in my house.
you were making money while
I was trying to make money while I was doing press, to be honest with you. I'd be doing interviews and they were like, I'd be like, I'm hanging upside down right now, by the way, but I had built up my time of being upside down. I had built my time up to over 30 minutes.
Okay.
So I had over committed.
Did you have to get a doctor to like make sure you weren't doing something dumb,
I did go and see a doctor. Everything was fine. They said I was nuts, but they just said, they gave me a couple recommendations, and I just said, well, okay, I'll listen. I had to sign my life away to the city when I did it. Like,
in order to do it, the liability was basically like, there's no way we can sue. Like, you're not going to sue anyone. You're just going to be dead. Like.
Right. Well, my estate would have been suing the city, but my family would have got rich, but I wouldn't have seen it down with it. But no, yeah, I had to sign my life away when I did that stunt.
Sure.
Just for
Yeah, I'm
legality,
sure the city lawyers
legal,
were just like, what?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what are you doing?
Right.
No, this is not.
Right. So they put that paper in front of me, and I just, whatever. Okay. I just want to do the damn thing. Like, I really did. I just wanted to do it. I didn't care if one person showed up. I was doing it. But luckily, a lot of people showed up. So
how do you make sure that you don't fall? So did you have to talk to somebody who's an expert in climbing?
I had an expert. I hired one of the best expert riggers in the business in doing theatrical rigging.
Nice.
The guys that I worked with the Winlendas.
Cool.
So
what's that?
The Winlendas were the guys that did the high wire rope walks.
Oh, okay.
And so I had some of the top notch people working with me for safety. So when I did it, I literally just had it's a thing that goes around my ankles, and it's a carabiner hook. That's it. It's a carabiner wrapping around your ankles. It's it, and it's attached to another line that's attached to a crane hook, and that's it. There's nothing else. There is no net. That's it. If things go wrong, Franco Harris has to catch my ass. So, and I told him that.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
R.I.P. Franco. I know.
Too early.
I loved Franco.
Way too early.
He was such a good guy. He was so nice to me. He would have me do events at his house, or he had some private events. And I remember it was about after the second time he had booked me, because he'd call me up and he'd say, "Lee, I need you for this event." Franco, I'm in, man. You're Franco. And I remember I asked him after the second time I did something for him. I said, "Franco, is there any way I could get a quote from you, like from Franco Harris,
Wow.
like about my magic show.
Yeah.
He goes, oh yeah. He goes, I think you're incredible. I go, hold on, that's a good one, but I got a better one. I said, how about this? All you got to do is agree to this saying, and I'll use it. And he's like, okay. I go,
I think you're immaculate.
You know where I'm going. Lee, you did an immaculate job at our dinner reception. I couldn't catch a thing. Franco Harris. And he said, yeah. He goes, oh yeah, that's great. He goes, I love it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah, he was awesome. But that's the thing. I've gotten a chance to do, interact with all those guys in the fabric of Pittsburgh.
Everybody says he's the nicest guy. Like he was such a solid dude.
He was such a sweet guy.
I got to meet him because his son was getting involved in politics.
Doc, yeah, I know Doc very well.
My grandma helped out with his campaign when he was.
I performed at one of his campaign fundraisers.
It's possible that you and I were both there, and I just hadn't met you yet.
I was at one of his campaign fundraisers.
I didn't really get to know you until like after college with music.
Right.
My friendship with Bonix and Nugget. And,
I knew Brandon.
Guys.
I knew Brandon and Nugget and Zimmy and all those crazy guys.
Yeah.
Way back in the day, like I mean, I remember when Bonix. I mean, he was on the radio station. I think he had just come over from Pitt, and he was now on Kiss or
Whammo for a second.
Yeah. And we became buddies, and he would bring me into the station, do magic for like
that's cool.
artists that were coming through.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, a couple times. And then I linked up with became buddies with Zimmy and Nugget, and I became friends with all the DJs in Pittsburgh. And I would I would hire DJs like DJ Scott Ehrenberger, one of my best friends.
Yeah, great guy. He's coming on soon.
Yeah, I'm his daughter. That's my goddaughter.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a great guy.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. So he was actually the DJ at Houdini 100. So I had him warming up the crowd.
That's really cool. Yeah, he's really into the like beer scene now. I've been seeing he was like getting into that, and then I saw him DJing some Penguins games too.
He does the Penguin games. Yeah, he's big on the Penguin games. Yeah,
along with PDC.
Mm-hmm.
I think we probably have enough.
Cool, bro. Yeah,
that
man.
was incredible.
Good catching up, man. Great talking.
Dude, you're such a great guest, man.
Thank you, man.
That was nuts.
If you want to follow anything, Instagram at Lee Terbosic, Facebook, Twitter, all that crap.
LEE
Terbosic 52upclose.com is my close-up magic show at Hotel Monaco. In Plain Sight is my stand-up comedy magic show, which will be at the Oaks on July 22nd. And I will be bringing back my show, The Life and Death of Harry Houdini, to the Liberty Magic Theater in downtown Pittsburgh in October through December.
Incredible. Well, we'll get our babysitters now. We're going to be watching the Discovery show. I can't wait to learn more about Harry. This has been such an amazing journey through magic, comedy,
right, man.
Your career, your life.
About it all today.
Just really, really, really special. And I'm so grateful for your time.
Thanks
so much, Lee.
Yeah, good time.